Chapter 101, Changing Bottles 1. Train hard when you get back. Train your flying sword often. I also have a technique for controlling and exerting force for your flying sword. Train harder. You'll have the ability to defend yourself when you can train your flying sword to be at your disposal, and Xiaozu explained after he returned to the research institute. Also, from today on, you have obtained special level 1 rights to the research institute. You are now familiar with a portion of the daily maintenance of the institute. During these 2 weeks, try your best to familiarize yourself with the situation. Ask Ah Huang if you don't understand anything. I'll have to hand the matter over to you after 2 weeks, and Xiaozu said. Zhu Tui was startled. Missen, what about you? What are you going to do? Me. And Xiaozu, who had removed her mask, smiled. You know about the research funding. It's impossible for them to force me to submit just based on the research funding. With my abilities, I should be able to accomplish a few more elimination missions. I've recovered from my injuries and am about to head out. I don't have much money left. And Xiaozu waved the finger that she had just used a day ago. Zhu Tui was silent. He wanted to pat his chest and tell her that he was going to enter the Longhua list and get her research funding. However, that would only make Xiaozu think that he was boasting. Zhu Tui could only say that after he understood the situation and came to a conclusion. Of course, he also had thoughts about conducting research. With Zhu Tui's illusory introspection, he should have no problems discovering a few genetic base points. However, it was not that simple to obtain research results. First, you had to have a concrete theory and a process that others could replicate. Otherwise, there was no way to determine the outcome. That was not something he could do just by patting his chest. Zhu Tui had to experiment with everything. Missen, we'll think of a way together. Don't be anxious. It's too dangerous to go out and do missions to eliminate the enemy, Zhu Tui said. Why, what did Mr. Wei tell you? Did he want you to make it onto the Longhua list? And Xiaozu asked with a smile. Zhu Tui nodded. First, there are rules in the school. A new student would only be able to enter the top 100 of the Longhua list after 3 months. Furthermore, it shouldn't be difficult for you to enter the top 100 of the Year 1 Longhua list. However, it was too difficult to enter the top 10. If a student from the Waxia Genetic Evolution College managed to get into the top 10 of the Year 1 Longhua list, they would be in the top 30 or even the top 20 of this batch of students. You should focus on your studies. Leave the issue of funding to me, and Xiaozu said. Zhu Tui was silent. He did not nod. Missen, I used more than a dozen bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs yesterday. I'll replenish them after I'm done. What are you saying? You are now half the owner of the research institute. It's fine if you use it. It's only right now. If this was when my teacher was still on the Blue Star, I would have no problems giving you $1 million in research grants a year. I'll try to get you to be a research assistant after we're done. You'll get a salary then. And Xiaozu handed Zhu Tui a card while she was speaking. This is my individual rights card. You can use this card to purchase some of the things you need for your training, such as a level E energy restoration elixir. You can get a discount on those. It should be able to save you a lot of money, and Xiaozu said. Thank you, Missen. Zhu Tui did not reject the gift. He took it over. He had spent a large amount of money. He had to save as much as he could. Zhu Tui spent the next few days thinking about this problem, aside from his training. How could he get research funding for the Research Institute number 14 to reduce Xiaozu's burden? This was especially so for research that yielded new results. There were many avenues for that. More importantly, how could the genetic base points that Zhu Tui found in the illusory introspective state be replicated by someone else? That was the difficult part of producing research results. However, after thinking about it for a few days, he had a preliminary idea. Other than that, he spent the next few days constantly familiarizing himself with the technique of controlling the pocket-sized flying sword. In reality, the best attack distance of this pocket-sized flying sword was 10 meters. It had the strongest power within a 30 to 100 meter range. It could even penetrate an inch of steel plate within a 100-meter radius. It had terrifying power. However, its power was not as terrifying when it was at close range. The distance of the acceleration was not enough. However, the technique of controlling a flying sword became useful at this moment. Circling. Circling once or twice or attacking in an arc would not only increase the number of attacks, but it would also increase the power of the attack. However, in the end, its power was a little weaker within 10 meters. This made Zhu Tui think about Xiaozu's alloy silver pill. He had to prepare a set of alloy silver pills if he really wanted to enter the Donghua list. The flying sword would definitely draw blood. Even he might not be able to control the power of his sword once it was unleashed. Of course, the might of the alloy silver pill was not that great at close range. However, comparatively speaking, it was not as lethal as a flying sword. In these few days, Zhu Tui had managed to come up with a battle strategy that was suitable for his current abilities. At close range, which was also within the radius of his mental senses, the alloy silver pill combined with the mental whip should have immense power. The flying sword was the best choice for long-range attacks. Furthermore, to some extent, the flying sword was like a trump card. Of course, Zhu Tui would activate the flying sword without hesitation if he really needed to. He did not want to get the alloy silver pills from Xiaozu again. He did not want to burden her further. Zhu Tui already understood that the genetic arms center in the school provided these things. However, he had to pay a certain price. They were not supplied for free. Actually, the Waxia Genetic Evolution College had a school that specializes in genetic armaments. Their main goal was to research and create genetic armaments. Chapter 102, Changing Bottles 2. It was also an unpopular area with fewer people. Occasionally, a student from the School of Enlightened Mind would switch schools. However, most of the supplies in the Genetic Armament Center were for students to replace their training supplies. For example, the vacuum silver tantalum bottles that Zhu Tui was going to replace now could also be changed at the Genetic Armament Center. He could also change the bottle with Wen Xiao. However, after the previous incident, Zhu Tui no longer wanted to interact with Wen Xiao, who harbored ill intentions toward him. The Genetic Armament Center was located within the Extreme Branch Institute. That was because most of the students in the Extreme Branch were suited for genetic equipment. They also exchanged their training equipment here. By the time Zhu Tui arrived, school had already ended. Many students came to trade for training equipment. He first went to the service counter for the mystery branch. 2 to 3 students were also replacing the vacuum silver tantalum bottle. A senior who had just received his bottle was also very happy. Haha, it's been more than a year. I've finally managed to exchange for a 20 grams vacuum silver tantalum bottle. Let me tell you, with the speed at which my mind power is increasing, I would definitely be ranked at the top of the second year in the mystery branch. Wang Luo, Mystery Branch Institute's first year superb type. You came to exchange the 5 grams vacuum silver tantalum bottle. Do you have a teacher's verification? Yes, yes. Zhu Tui knitted his brows slightly when he saw this scene. Did he still need the teacher's verification? Good morning, Professor. Do I have to provide a verification for the replacement of the vacuum silver tantalum bottle? Not really. If you don't have it, you can display it with your mind power here. You can change it when you reach your limits. This is a public training device provided by the school. The teacher working here was very friendly. Thank you, teacher. This matter was rather convenient. Even if he had to look for Wen Xiao when he returned, Wen Xiao would definitely not make things difficult for him under such a situation. However, it was a little uncomfortable for Zhu Tui to look for Wen Xiao alone. Where's your original vacuum silver tantalum bottle? Take it out. Our rule is to accept one and distribute one. Zhu Tui took out the vacuum silver foil bottle he had used just now from his bag. The teacher in charge was startled the moment he took it out. You want to exchange it for a 100-gram vacuum silver tantalum bottle? What year are you? Are you in your second or third year? Why do you look a little unfamiliar? When they heard that someone was going to exchange for a 100 grams vacuum silver tantalum bottle, the students around him immediately gathered around, including the first-year student, Wang Luo. Senior, you're exchanging a 100 grams vacuum silver tantalum bottle in your third year. Your progress is not slow. Which school are you from? Zhu Wenqi, who had also come to exchange his bottle, leaned over and smiled. He had the intention of befriending Zhu Tui. In college, the higher the grade, the more social the atmosphere was. These kinds of connections was something that he needed in the future. I'm not a third-year student. Zhu Tui smiled and displayed his identity information to the teacher. The teacher in charge, who was about to register his name, suddenly froze. You're not in your third year, then are you in your second year? I should be familiar with all of the students in the Mystery Branch Institute. Why do you feel like you are a stranger? Zhu Wenqi was a little confused. Suddenly, Wang Luo, who had just moved over, looked at Zhu Tui and said in shock, Zhu Tui, you came to exchange for a 20-gram bottle. You are. Zhu Tui was a little unfamiliar with the name. I'm also from the Mystery Branch. I've seen you fight against Deng Wei. I am very impressed. Wang Luo gave Zhu Tui a thumbs up. Zhu Tui quickly apologized. He was a famous person in the Mystery Branch. Many people recognized him, but he did not. He felt a little embarrassed. By the side, Zhu Wenqi and a few other students who had just heard the commotion looked at Zhu Tui and cursed in their hearts. Were all first-year students this sick nowadays? He had exchanged a 100-gram vacuum silver tantalum bottle in his first year in college. They were second-year students who had just exchanged for a 20 grams vacuum silver tantalum bottle. They had been feeling smug just now. All of them instantly felt uncomfortable. Zhu Wenqi, who had been feeling a little smug just now, felt as though he had been hit by 10,000 bullets. Did you come to exchange for a 20 grams bottle? How did your mental strength training progress so quickly? I've just swapped out my 5-gram bottle. Wang Luo asked 3 consecutive questions with a look of admiration. It made Zhu Wenqi and the rest a little confused. Did they hear wrongly just now? Did this first-year student in front of him come to exchange for a 20 grams vacuum silver tantalum bottle? If he had come to trade for a 20 grams bottle, they would not get hurt 10,000 times. They would at most be hurt 1,000 times. After all, there were still some demon-like geniuses in the first grade. Alright, the verification of your identity card is complete. Student Zhu Tui, since you do not have the signature of a teacher, you can display it for all to see. I'll note it down so that I can change the bottle for you. The voice of the teacher in charge suddenly rang out. Zhu Wenqi and the rest were extremely shocked. Did this first-year student really come to exchange for a 100 grams bottle? Wasn't that rather impossible? However, at that instant, their eyes bulged. That was because during the instant Zhu Tui nodded toward the teacher, his gaze casually landed on the silver nameplate in the 20-gram vacuum silver tantalum bottle. The silver nameplate had suddenly been pushed to a 90-degree angle. It then hovered there without moving. Zhu Wenqi and his classmates, as well as Wang Luo, instantly widened their eyes. So Zhu Tui is here to exchange for a 100 grams bottle. But I've only exchanged for 5 grams. At that instant, Wang Luo instantly felt dejected. It felt as though they were both studying mathematics. Someone else would score 100 while he scored 5 after 2 months. It was this feeling. He was already doubting himself. He felt a little despair. Zhu Wenqi was even more dumbfounded. He really exchanged it for a 100 grams bottle. He instantly felt as though he had been hit by 100,000 bullets. No, it should be 1,000,000 bullets. As a second-year senior, Zhu Wenqi was too embarrassed to look at the 20-gram vacuum silver tantalum bottle that he had just exchanged for. Teacher, is my demonstration all right? Zhu Tui asked the teacher in charge. While he was speaking, the silver nameplate in the 20-gram vacuum silver tantalum bottle remained suspended at a 90-degree angle. It did not tremble at all. Zhu Wenqi and the rest, who were still in a state of shock, once again cursed in their hearts. The Zhu Tui in front of him was a monster. Maintaining his mind power and prioritizing his focus were 2 important things. He could not afford to be distracted. Under 99% of the time, the silver nameplate would definitely drop or fluctuate violently if he spoke. However, the silver nameplate did not move even though Zhu Tui was talking to the teacher. Just how much more powerful was his mind power? The teacher in charge was also dumbfounded. He had seen many geniuses from the Mystery Branch. However, this was the first time he saw someone like Zhu Tui. Oh, that's enough. Wait, I want to take a photo. In his shock, the teacher in charge's grip became a little messy. He accidentally knocked the vacuum silver tantalum bottle that Wang Luo had handed over to him just now under the counter. It shattered with a thud. Be careful, Professor, Zhu Tui quickly said. The teacher in charge looked at the glass shards on the ground, then glanced toward Zhu Tui, whose silver nameplate had not moved a single time. A thought occurred to him. F** King Hell. It was all because of this lad that he had to pay $50 in compensation. The bubble tea that he's supposed to give his girlfriend is gone. Chapter 103, No Time Like the Present. What type of alloy do you want? What size do you want? There are all of them in this list. Take a look and see which one you want. After learning of Zhu Tui's intentions, the teacher in charge of the weapons and equipment at the Genetic Armament Center immediately handed Zhu Tui a list. Zhu Tui looked at the list. There were 2-element and 3-element alloys in the tantalum alloy provided by the Genetic Armament Center. There were only 2 kinds of binary alloys, tantalum and titanium. He could purchase the binary alloys with cash. The price was simple, $5,000 a gram. Their specifications ranged from 2 grams to 10 grams. To be honest, it was rather expensive. However, 3-element alloy was more expensive, and there was a reason for how expensive it was. According to the introduction, more tantalum had been fused into the alloy, which reduced the resistance to mind power. However, the alloy was harder, more heat resistant, and had less wind resistance. It was also because it had fused with more of the newly discovered precious metal ingots that he needed contribution points to purchase the 3-element alloy. A gram required 2 contribution points and $10,000 in cash. There were only 3 kinds of alloys: nickel-based tantalum, chromium-based tantalum, and titanium-based tantalum. Nickel-based tantalum alloy was a little toxic. It was not recommended for students to use it, much less use it repeatedly. It looked a little like a shotgun. It would automatically disintegrate into a few dozen bullets if it hit its target. It was extremely destructive. The wind resistance of chromium-based alloys was smaller. They were of the same size but heavier than titanium-based alloys. Titanium-based alloys were of the same size as the others but were lighter in weight. They were more resistant to corrosion and heat and had a smaller probability of being damaged during use. Teacher, give me 5 of these chromium-based tantalum alloys. Currently, the best number of alloy silver pills Zhu Tui could control was 2. He could also control 3, but the power would be reduced. However, he should have no problems controlling 3 of them after some time. Considering the fact that he could not retrieve the pills during battle, he decided to purchase 5 chromium-based alloy pills first. How many grams? 5 grams. These alloy silver pills could not be used if they were too heavy and did not have enough destructive power. If they were too light, they did not have enough destructive power. 10 contribution points for 1, 50,000 in cash, 50 points for 5, and 250,000 in cash. Zhu Tui felt the pinch when he heard the attendant's price. It was too expensive. He had a little more contribution points, but he only had a little more than $500,000 in cash. He had lost half of that. Look, how much of a discount can I get with my low-grade level D right? You'll get a 5% discount if you have low-grade level D right. A discount of $10,000 was not bad. He thought for a moment, then handed over the supplementary card that An Xiaozu had given him. Teacher, can you use this supplementary card? You can only obtain an affiliated card when your individual rights are level C. This is a low-grade level C affiliated card. According to the regulations, you could enjoy a 20% discount. However, the discount is only cash. You can't enjoy a discount on contribution points. The 20% discount saved Zhu Tui $50,000. Zhu Tui was a little surprised. Then let's settle the bill with this. Oh, yes, I wanted to ask if I can use my contribution points to exchange for a level E energy restoration elixir. Contribution points were extremely valuable. According to what the students and teachers said, contribution points could be used to purchase things that money could. However, contribution points could be used to purchase things that could not be exchanged for money. Coincidentally, he was here today. Zhu Tui wanted to know just how valuable these contribution points were. Use contribution points to exchange for a level E energy elixir. The attendant had a look of extreme shock. Based on the regulations, 10 contribution points can be exchanged for a level E energy restoration elixir. However, student, I advise you not to do that. Exchanging contribution points for things that can be bought with money is too much of a loss. Thank you for your reminder, teacher. I was just asking. A few minutes later, after Zhu Tui got his hands on the chromium alloy silver pills, he suddenly had a thought. He took out the flying sword that Xiaozu had sent him just now. Oh, yes, can you see what kind of material this is? Can you customize a flying sword of this size? Currently, the flying sword that Xiaozu had given him was very suitable for him to use. However, Zhu Tui estimated that it would be a little small after he used it for 1 to 2 years. He needed to exchange it for something else. He would ask her about it when he was at it. I need to examine it with a machine. It can't be seen with the naked eye. It's just right here. It'll be quick, the teacher in charge said. All right. The teacher in charge placed the silver flying sword that Zhu Tui handed him into the testing device. However, he immediately furrowed his brow. That was because the detector was beeping. He tried 3 times without success. I'm sorry, this device can't detect it. If you need it, you can bring it to the research institute at the Genetic Armament Center for testing. We can definitely detect it there, the teacher in charge said. No, thank you. Zhu Tui did not want to hand such a precious item over to someone else and be out of his sight for a long time. He rejected the request on the spot. After retrieving the silver flying sword, Zhu Tui asked, "Oh, yes, teacher. Under normal circumstances, would this device be able to detect its metallic components?" Actually, the equipment we use is the most advanced in the public domain. Under normal circumstances, we would only have such a scene if it mixed in special materials that have not been publicly discovered. Under normal circumstances, they would have been made out of special substances obtained from outer space. These unique substances obtained from outer space would have some unique effects. They are all extremely precious and rare, the teacher in charge said. Oh, thank you, teacher. Zhu Tui had wanted to plan and customize a large flying sword as soon as possible. He did not expect the small flying sword in front of him to be made out of a unique material. Are there any special effects? I'll ask Miss An when I need to change in the future. Zhu Tui made use of every moment he had to focus on his training for the next few days. He had a great time training both in controlling his flying sword and the alloy silver pill to attack and defend. The benefits of having a high rating in the school were displayed at this moment. Students who had a rating of mid-grade level C and above could enjoy a private training room for free. The time limit was 14 hours. This was a private training room that was 30 meters long and 15 meters wide. Although the flying sword still could not be used here. However, it was enough. It had been less than 2 months since school started, yet Zhu Tui was already skipping classes. Of course, it did not mean that Zhu Tui was intentionally skipping classes. It was just that he no longer needed to attend individual classes. For example, when Xiao's mind power training lesson. Zhu Tui would only attract the jealousy of others if he went. Thus, he decided not to go. However, what he did not know was that Che Zhan, the number 1 of the first-year students in the Mystery Branch Institute, looked for him several times during the mind power training lesson. However, he did not manage to find him. After he met Wang Luo, Zhu Wenqi, and the rest of the students at the Genetic Armament Center that day, especially since Wang Luo was a first-year student from the Mystery Branch. Not long after he returned, he told them about how Zhu Tui had already exchanged for a 100 grams vacuum silver tantalum bottle. The other students had the same reaction. They did not believe it. Exchanging for a 100 grams vacuum silver tantalum bottle was something only a third-year student could do. No matter how powerful Zhu Tui was, he could not do it. It was possible for Zhu Tui to exchange for a 20 grams bottle. Che Zhan's first reaction when he heard this was disbelief. However, there was no need for Wang Luo to lie about such a matter. Che Zhan had always wanted to confirm with Zhu Tui in person whether it was true. He did not have any other thoughts. He just wanted to make sure. Of course, he still had a competitive spirit. Che Zhan was publicly acknowledged as the best first-year student in the Mystery Branch. He successfully cultivated 3 superb type fire element abilities in less than 2 months. If he had to face Deng Wei today, he would definitely be able to blast the lonely testicle warrior, Deng Wei, out of the room and make him smell like roasted meat. Even if he did not improve as much as Zhu Tui in terms of mind power, he was very confident in his abilities. During these few weeks of practical use, not a single first-year student from the mystery branch was a match for Chazan at all. Of course, that was excluding Zhu Tui. Zhu Tui did not participate in the first 2 weeks, but he had not attended any classes during these 2 weeks. It made Chazan anxious. Chazan, who had been holding back for several days, finally lost his patience. He went straight to the School of Enlightened Mind to look for Zhu Tui. Zhu Tui was on the phone when he found him. "Brother Chai, do you have any thoughts about how I killed you in your room at the student reception center?" Zhu Tui laughed through the phone. "The time we fought, when you smashed a glass with a bean and made me pay for it, while the other bean directly loosened my front teeth." "That's right. If we were to take that battle seriously, you would have already died in battle." "Scram, aren't you talking nonsense? That was the battlefield that you had planned. Furthermore, I was taking a beating passively. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had the chance to attack. Dying in battle, you would have died 10 times over." Chai Xiao became angry when the topic of dying in battle was brought up. He almost stomped his feet in frustration when Zhu Tui mentioned it. "Why, are you indignant that you were killed?" Zhu Tui actively provoked him. "Oh," Chai Xiao froze on the other end of the line. "You lad, you are provoking me. You are actively causing trouble. Tell me, what exactly do you want to do?" "It's nothing much. I've gotten much stronger recently and want to test my abilities. Brother Chai, you are a more suitable target." Chai Xiao, who was on the other end of the line, immediately widened his eyes. "You've gone overboard, lad. You're getting carried away. I am ranked 89th on the Year 2 Donghua list. You are a first-year student, yet you dare to say that I am a suitable target for your challenge. You're asking for a beating. Tell me, when do you want me to knock your teeth out?" Chai Xiao said. "There's no time like the present," Zhu Tui said with a smile. "My God, you sure are arrogant. All right, I'll satisfy you. I'll show you how to spell, senior. You decide on the location. Training building, room A72 in 15 minutes. I've already reserved a room," Zhu Tui said. TSK. It looks like you planned this all along. You really want to practice swimming in a tank of feces. All right, I'll satisfy you. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Chai Xiao laughed angrily. "Thank you, Brother Chai." Zhu Tui thanked him because he was looking for a worthy opponent. Chai Xiao was a rather good choice. A second-year student who was also ranked on the Year 2 Donghua list. Chai Xiao would arrive with a call from Zhu Tui. Naturally, he had to thank him. "Hey, Chazan, what are you doing in our class?" Zhu Tui, who had just finished his call, saw Chazan. Chazan had wanted to ask Zhu Tui about how he used a 100 grams bottle, but he changed his tone when he heard that Zhu Tui was going to challenge someone else. "I heard that you were going to battle a second-year senior. I want to go and observe. Is that all right?" Compared to a purely numerical comparison, Chazan placed more importance on the outcome of the battle. Chazan had already decided that he wanted to have a battle with Zhu Tui if the opportunity presented itself. "All right, let's head over together." Zhu Tui did not refuse after he thought about it. He also wanted to fight with Chazan after he fought Chai Xiao. That was because he not only had to face students from the Extreme Branch Institute, but he also had to face students from the Mystery Branch Institute if he wanted to challenge the Donghua list. All of these required Zhu Tui to accumulate actual combat experience. Chapter 104, Killed Again. Chai Xiao had not come alone. He had come with his girlfriend. Judging from the way they were dressed, they really were a family. She had long yellow hair that was tinged with gold and purple. She had tied it up high and was wearing light smoky makeup. She looked extremely alluring. "Brother, this is my girlfriend, Shi Hongdiang," Chai Xiao actively introduced him girlfriend. "Good morning, sister-in-law." Zhu Tui was tactful and took the initiative to greet her. However, the situation turned ugly. Shi Hongdiang, who was wearing long false eyelashes, took a step forward and indicated the distance between her and Chai Xiao. "Don't call me that. I'm still 10,000 miles away from being your sister-in-law. You can call me senior." Shi Hongdiang, who was standing with her arms crossed while wearing her tall Doc Martens, said to Chai-Seo, if you want to fight, then get on with it. I don't have the time to waste with you here. Chai-Seo felt a little awkward that she actively pulled away from him. He quickly explained, the school informed us that a student from the India sector is here for an exchange. Furthermore, the student that the teacher brought is from the mystery branch. I want to spar with my brother. Let me tell you, even though my brother Zhu Tui is only a first-year mystery branch student, he is very powerful. Chi Hongying stood with her arms crossed. She glanced at Zhu Tui, then turned her gaze toward Chai-Seo. He's a first year. No matter how powerful he is still weakling. Zhu Tui felt a little awkward. He glanced toward Chai-Seo. It seemed that Chai-Seo had not managed to deal with his girlfriend. He looked like he was still in the stages of chasing and bootlicking her. Hongying, do you remember the famous lonely testicle warrior, Deng Wei? That is the result of my brother's battle. He is really powerful. He defeated a new student who had just entered the school. He's still a weakling. After she said this, Chi Hongying observed Chai-Seo and said, you would have to really have the ability if he can beat you up so badly that you be the lonely testicle warrior. At this moment, Chai-Seo was not the only one who felt awkward. Even Che Zhan, who came with Zhu Tui, had become awkward. Chai-Seo's girlfriend was too violent. Of course, Zhu Tui felt that he should remove the word, girlfriend, from Chai-Seo's introduction. Hurry up. I'll go eat by myself if you guys are still dawdling, Chi Hongying urged. Chai-Seo shook his head, which had turned red, blue, and green, a little awkwardly. He then said to Zhu Tui, brother, let's end this quickly. I'll satisfy you now if you want to light up the toilet. All right. Zhu Tui was a little hesitant when he agreed to the request. He did not expect Chai-Seo to come with the girlfriend he was wooing. Would he embarrass Chai-Seo if they fought later? That would be bad. Brother Chai, why don't we do it another day? Why do you want to do it another day? Right now, hurry. Brother Chai. Faster, faster. Chai-Seo took the initiative to stand at the center of the arena while he was speaking. He waved toward Zhu Tui. Then, all right, Brother Chai, put on your protective gear first. Do I need to wear protective gear to deal with you? Hurry. No, Brother Chai, both of us have to wear protective gear. Otherwise, we are not going to fight. Zhu Tui was very determined on this point. You two weaklings, are you done? Their nagging caused Chi Hongying to be extremely displeased. Brother Chai, I can't control myself sometimes. You wouldn't want to go on a date with a swollen head, would you? Even if you can defeat me. Zhu Tui insisted. Chai-Seo accepted Zhu Tui's suggestion after he thought about what had happened last time and his explanation. Otherwise, if he really had to go on a date with a swollen bruise, Chai-Seo guessed that Chi Hongying would definitely abandon him along the way. Wear them all. Wear all of your protective gear. Wear all of your transparent face masks, Zhu Tui reminded. You even brought protective gear to deal with a weakling. Chai-Seo, you are also a weakling. Chi Hongying, who was standing with her arms crossed, had a look of disdain. Chai-Seo's expression became a little ugly. This woman's mouth was too vicious. But damn it, this woman suited his tastes. I'll beat her up until she calls me, Dad, after I improve my abilities. Then, I'll be able to hold my head high in front of my brothers. After setting such a goal in his heart, Chai-Seo quickly put on his protective gear. By the side, Zhu Tui, who was a little displeased, glared coldly at Chi Hongying. He hated this woman. Brother, don't say that I'm bullying you. 10 meters is the standard battle distance of the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. It's all right, you can get closer if you want. He tossed them out casually. The two alloy silver pills started to dance around Zhu Tui as they prepared to attack. With this move, the expressions of Chai-Seo, Chi Hongying, and even Che Zhan changed. Chi Hongying, who had scolded Chai-Seo like a weakling just now, furrowed her brows. She took out a pair of brass knuckles from her pocket and tossed them toward Chai-Seo. Use this to avoid being injured by the pills. Chai-Seo, who had received the brass knuckles, was beaming with joy. This was why he liked Chi Hongying. She looked cold on the outside but was warm on the inside. Even though she had a sharp tongue, she was not a bad person. She was much better than the sweet-talking ex-girlfriends he had before. As for Chazan, when he saw Zhu Tui activate the spinning alloy silver pills, he no longer had any doubts that Zhu Tui could use a 100-gram vacuum silver tantalum bottle. However, Chazan was eager to fight with him. Zhu Tui's performance was much better than the students he had fought recently. He was very bored during the many practical lessons during the past few weeks. He could not wait to fight Zhu Tui. "Brother, I am ready." Chai Xiao charged forward as soon as he finished speaking. He left behind an S-shaped afterimage as he pounced toward Zhu Tui. The 10-meter distance only took Chai Xiao half a second to traverse. However, just as he was about to pounce forward, a series of explosions instantly rang out like rain. Every pounding sound caused his body to shake uncontrollably. It disrupted his rhythm. However, Chai Xiao still arrived in front of Zhu Tui in the end. He whipped his leg toward Zhu Tui at an incredible angle. Bang! Bang! The two alloyed silver pills dragged along a flash of light as they slammed heavily onto Chai Xiao's mask. It landed on the bulletproof transparent mask. Chai Xiao felt as though he had been hit by a sledgehammer. He could no longer control his body and fell backward. The attacks naturally stopped. Oh, FCK. Chai Xiao, who had fallen to the ground and was sitting up, looked at the cracked mask in disbelief. How can it be that powerful? This mask can block energy weapons. You actually, no wonder. By the side, Chazan was also in disbelief. During the split second just now, Chazan felt that he could not see the trajectory of the silver pills clearly. However, with the help of his mind power, he should be able to determine the attack points of the silver pills in advance. Whether or not he could defend himself was another matter. Chai Xiao slowly got up from the ground and changed into a transparent face shield. He stood 10 meters away from Zhu Tui and adopted an offensive stance. "Brother, be careful. I'll have to use my full strength this time." In the next instant, Chai Xiao started to attack again. However, he had clearly slowed down. However, Zhu Tui did not slow down at all. The moment Chai Xiao started to attack, the silver pills circling around Zhu Tui turned into a flash of silver light and shot toward Chai Xiao with lightning speed. Ding! Chai Xiao threw a punch forward. His brass knuckles accurately struck toward Zhu Tui's alloy silver pill. With a thud, the immense force sent one of Zhu Tui's alloy silver pills flying. It instantly flew 20 meters away and cut off from Zhu Tui's mental senses. After succeeding in his attack, Chai Xiao gave Zhu Tui a wide smile as if he was trying to intimidate Zhu Tui. He quickly stepped forward. Another silver pill flew out of Zhu Tui's palm. The two silver pills howled as they shot toward Chai Xiao again. Chai Xiao, who had been through this, attacked with his fists as fast as lightning. He met Zhu Tui's alloyed silver pills with his brass knuckles. With two bangs, he sent Zhu Tui's two alloyed silver pills flying 20 meters away. "Brother, you are going to die in battle." Chai Xiao closed in and punched toward Zhu Tui. It was also at this moment that a piercing sound rang out behind Chai Xiao's head. Without waiting for Chai Xiao to turn around, the alloy silver pill landed on the back of Chai Xiao's helmet. It was only 2 inches away from his unprotected neck. The immense impact caused Chai Xiao to stagger. His attack toward Zhu Tui missed. "Brother Chai, you died in battle again." Zhu Tui smiled, revealing his row of white teeth. Chazan's eyes widened. Over 20 meters. The distance of Zhu Tui's mental control over the alloy silver pill was over 20 meters. The alloy silver pill was sent flying over 20 meters backward. However, it was still managing to roll back. How was that possible? At this distance, he would not be able to do it even if he had a 100 grams vacuum silver tantalum bottle. Chai Xiao rubbed the back of his head that had become heavy from the impact. He had a confused expression. I died in battle again. Weakling, let me do it. Shi Hongdiang, who was stepping on her martens, suddenly said, "Give me your brass knuckles." Chapter 105, Doing a Good Deed 1. Chai Xiao was rather indignant that he had once again died in battle. However, he was very rational. Zhu Tui's silver pill attacks were unpredictable. It had extremely long range and startling power. He had not found a way to deal with the situation for the time being. The probability of him being killed again if he charged forward at this moment was too high. Since his girlfriend wanted to fight, he would let her fight. He could also observe the battle and think of a way to defeat the enemy. Honestly, he had fought against many people from the mystery branch in battle. However, this was the first time Zhu Tui had used his mind power to control the attacks from the silver pills. Here, Chai Xiao tossed the brass knuckles toward Qi Hongying. Even though Qi Hongying's mouth was vicious, her mind was not. On the contrary, she was extremely calm. Qi Hongying put on her full set of protective gear even without Zhu Tui's reminder. "Brother, be careful." Your sister-in-law, Qi Hongying, who was putting on her protective equipment, glared at Chai Xiao. Chai Xiao stammered. "Haha, my girlfriend is incredible. Let me tell you, she is ranked 32nd on the Year 2 Donghua list. She's much more powerful than me," Chai Xiao said. "Sister, Senior Qi is better than you." Zhu Tui was startled. "Otherwise, why would I say that my standards are high? I wouldn't even fancy someone who is worse than me," Chai Xiao said proudly. However, there was always a little evasion in his eyes. "She's almost 60 places higher than you on the Year 2 Donghua list. She's not just a little more powerful," Zhu Tui said. "Don't worry, one of the abilities that I've been bitterly training for is about to succeed. As long as this ability succeeds, I would have no problems entering the top 20 of the Year 2 Donghua list," Chai Xiao said confidently. "HMPH, what's the big deal about being in the top 20? Give me 3 months, I'll definitely have a place in the top 10 of the Year 2 Donghua list." Qi Hongying, who had put on her protective gear, executed a somersault and landed at the center of the arena. "You weakling, watch and learn." Qi Hongying had directed the term, weakling, toward Chai Xiao. Her words made Chai Xiao look extremely embarrassed. Even Zhu Tui felt a little awkward when he heard her. "Get ready, I'm going to attack." Qi Hongying gently pushed her fists forward. The alloy knuckles immediately let out a crisp sound. It also charged toward Zhu Tui while the alloy silver pill was still piercing through the air. Qi Hongying's gaze was sharp. She was not anxious at all. After a series of clashes, she sent 4 of Zhu Tui's alloy silver pills flying with her brass knuckles. Zhu Tui only had 1 alloyed silver pill left, which he could control with his mental chain. With Chai Xiao's experience, Qi Hongying would not let her guard down. The alloy silver pill danced in the air. Every time it wanted to attack Qi Hongying, it would either be dodged by her or sent flying by her knuckles. Through the constant fighting, Zhu Tui suddenly understood the meaning behind An Xiaozu's technique of controlling a flying sword. They would have ended up like this if they had been direct or if their trajectories had been seen through. The silver pills were blocked or sent flying. It was the same for the flying sword. However, the destructive power of the flying sword was too great. Even Zhu Tui could not control its power. It was not suitable for him to train with the sword now. As the saying went, grasp a fundamental point and all the rest will follow. If Zhu Tui could control the silver pills to perfection, have endless transformations, and be impossible to guard against, then it would be the same for the flying sword. An alloy silver pill greatly reduced the threat that Qi Hongying posed. Qi Hongying rapidly approached him. After sending Zhu Tui's alloy silver pill flying with another punch, she aimed a palm toward the side of his neck just as the black, tall martens were about to stomp toward his lower abdomen. "Careful!" Chai Xiao shouted in alarm outside the court. Zhu Tui's gaze froze. 2 mental alls were silently placed in the direction of Qi Hongying's attacks. Qi Hongying seemed to have sensed something. However, it was already too late. Her fists and legs collided with the invisible mental wall at the same time. There was a faint sound of metal colliding. Qi Hongying let out a dull grunt of pain. However, her eyes had become round. She retracted her fist slightly and charged forward again. Bang! Bang! The sound of energy explosions rang out. Energy field attack. The mental all that Zhu Tui had placed was instantly shattered by Qi Hongying. However, the alloy silver pill crashed onto Qi Hongying's mask with a piercing cry. It caused several cracks to appear on her mask. It immediately made Qi Hongying stop. "I lost this round. Try again." The protective suit only protected her vital points. Since Zhu Tui's alloy silver pill could hit the mask, it could also hit other unprotected areas of her body. She had naturally lost. However, Qi Hongying, who had admitted defeat, was not dejected at all. She licked her lips gently with the tip of her pink tongue. There was an inexplicable excitement on her face. I'll change my mask. Again. Below the stage, Chazan was not just shocked. He was also in a daze. He had already placed himself in Qi Hongying's shoes. If he had been Zhu Tui's opponent, how many blows could he have taken from Zhu Tui just now? The answer he got made him feel nothing but despair. Chai Xiao, who was indescribably shocked, looked at Zhu Tui and gave him a thumbs up. He did not expect Zhu Tui to be able to defeat Qi Hongying once. Qi Hongying had tortured him many times. Brother, continue to work hard. Hongying, look, I'm not spouting nonsense, am I? I told you that my brother is very powerful. Chai Xiao turned around and started to boast to Qi Hongying. A little stronger than a weakling like you, Qi Hongying, who had changed her mask, said. Chai Xiao was dejected. Just this was the woman's bad point. Chapter 106, Doing a Good Deed Too. Zhu Tui was amazed by the scene. He did not expect that Chai Xiao would like this kind of girl. He could even tolerate her, even with his personality. If it had been Zhu Tui, he would not have been able to tolerate having a girlfriend who had such a vicious tongue. While he was laughing, Zhu Tui's communication device suddenly rang with a message. He received a new message. Zhu Tui froze when he saw what it was. It was a message from Chai Xiao. Brother, if you still have any strength left, don't hold back later. Beat her up severely. Really? Of course. Do I look like I'm lying? The harder you hit, the better. She actually dared to look down on my brother. She's not respecting you, all right. He did not reveal the truth. Brother Chai, those are your words. Yes, beat her up as hard as you can. Beat her so hard that she can no longer walk. I'll carry her back when we are done, Chai Xiao said. Zhu Tui turned his head to look at Chai Xiao after he finished reading the message. It made Chai Xiao's hair stand. Brother Chai, I've saved this chat history. If you guys don't break up in the future, I'll take that as a guarantee for freeloading. If you don't treat me to a meal, I'll. Do you have any shame? Chai Xiao was dumbfounded. Zhu Tui was too effing shameless. Hee. Brother Chai, I'll keep it for a long time. Zhu Tui laughed loudly. You win, but if you can't beat her, I'll beat you up. I'm ready. Qi Hongying had already returned to the center of the arena. She was crouching slightly, like a tigress that was charging forward. She had an extraordinary aura. Bring it on. The next instant, Qi Hongying charged forward again. This time, she was more careful. Her attacks became sharper. When she attacked, her fists and legs carried an energy field. However, Zhu Tui was also harder to deal with. The two alloy silver pills danced in the air, one after the other. They immediately trapped Qi Hongying 10 meters away from him. It was difficult for her to get close to Zhu Tui. Zhu Tui became more and more familiar with the illusory technique that An Xiaozhu had taught him when he was controlling the flying sword. He gained a deeper understanding of the technique. Neither the attacks of the flying sword nor the silver pills could be dull. It could not be straightforward. He had to take a detour when he attacked. A circling attack. Under such a situation, he could switch from circling to attacking at any moment. He could even change the location of their attacks at any time. When it attacked, it was unpredictable and hard to defend against. In the previous battle, less than a minute into the battle, Qi Hongying had sent 4 of Zhu Tui's 5 silver alloy pills flying. All that was left was the silver alloy pill that was controlled by his mental chain. However, this battle took 10 minutes. Qi Hongying finally found an opportunity to attack with her energy field. She sent Zhu Tui's 4 alloy silver pills flying backward. Qi Hongying felt much less pressure when she only had 1 alloyed silver pill left. She once again charged toward Zhu Tui. She had been put at a disadvantage by the mental all last time. This time, Qi Hongying was clearly more careful. She did not hesitate to use her energy field when she got closer. With her energy field cultivation, she could definitely shatter the mental walls that Zhu Tui had set up. At the very least, her limbs would not be injured. Zhu Tui's gaze suddenly froze when Qi Hongying got within 3 meters of Zhu Tui. Mental whip. An invisible whip of mind power materialized above Qi Hongying's head and whipped downward with lightning speed. It disappeared from above Qi Hongying's head. Almost instantly, Qi Hongying let out a scream of pain. She fell onto the ground and clutched her head. She had a pained expression. Che Zan was dumbfounded. What kind of ability was that? Why was he so powerful? Chai Xiao was also extremely shocked. He quickly ran toward Qi Hongying and carried her in his arms. Hongying, are you alright? Do you need to be sent to the hospital? Qi Hongying shook her head in pain and refused. There's no need. It was just a momentary headache. I've already felt much better. Qi Hongying slowly stood up from Chai Xiao's arms. She clenched her teeth and shouted at Zhu Tui, wait for me for 5 minutes. Come again. Qi Hongying took out a level E energy restoration elixir and consumed it as she spoke. Alright. Seeing that Qi Hongying was fine and that she still had to fight, Chai Xiao had no choice but to step down from the stage. Chai Xiao gave Zhu Tui a thumbs up the moment he turned around to leave the stage. Zhu Tui received a message from Chai Xiao a few seconds later. Brother, well done. What was that move just now? Mental whip. Zhu Tui did not hide anything. There was no need to hide anything like that. Good, well done. Continue whipping. It'll be best if you can make her call you, Dad. Chai Xiao sent a message. Zhu Tui was speechless when he read the message. Brother Chai, you're not holding back anymore. You're handing me knives one after another. Is there a difference to me whether you have a knife or 10 knives in your hand? Anyway, I have to kneel and treat you to a meal if you show me your knife. It doesn't matter. On the contrary, I want you to whip your sister-in-law as hard as possible. Zhu Tui had a strange feeling when he read the message. Chai Xiao got him to whip Qi Hongying with his mental whip. This is a kinky series of instructions. 5 minutes later, Qi Hongying, who had mostly recovered her strength, pounced forward again like a tigress. This time, Zhu Tui's sword technique, or rather, the alloy silver pill sword technique, became more proficient. He comprehended even more. He could switch between reality and illusion at will. This time, Qi Hongying found an opportunity to send Zhu Tui's 4 alloy silver pills flying after 18 minutes. At the 19th minute, Qi Hongying, who had managed to get within 5 meters of Zhu Tui, was once again whipped to the ground by an invisible mental whip. She let out a dull grunt of pain. A minute later, Qi Hongying got up on her own and shouted angrily, again. I don't believe it. Below the stage, Chai Xiao secretly gave Zhu Tui a thumbs up. Good job, brother. They rested for 3 minutes before Qi Hongying battled Zhu Tui again. This time, Qi Hongying changed her tactic. She charged forward rapidly as soon as she attacked. She attacked with all her strength. She wanted to finish Zhu Tui off in 1 second. Similarly, the mental whip once again flipped Qi Hongying onto the ground within a 5-meter radius. Again. Qi Hongying refused to admit defeat. During their 5th exchange, Qi Hongying returned to her usual tactics after her lightning surprise attack failed twice. During the battle, Zhu Tui's technique of controlling the silver pills increased rapidly. 20 minutes into the intense battle, Qi Hongying finally found an opportunity to knock the second alloy silver pill away. Qi Hongying immediately felt a strong sense of powerlessness when she saw another alloy silver pill instantly fly out of Zhu Tui's pocket and dive toward the ground. We're not fighting anymore. Qi Hongying waved her hand and fell backward onto the stage. She started to pant heavily. Her body was drenched in sweat. I can tell that you are using me as a free sparring partner. I'm not fighting you. Seeing that Qi Hongying had admitted defeat, Chai Xiao obediently ran onto the stage and handed her a glass of water and a towel. Look, am I wrong? My brother is very powerful, right? Qi Hongying nodded heavily when she heard this. He is powerful, but you are still a weakling. Chai Xiao was speechless. Your mental whip is too powerful. It can directly attack an opponent's mind. However, there should be a way to restrain or defend against it. I'll challenge you when I find it. I'll get going. Goodbye. Qi Hongying staggered a little after she stood up. She must have been exhausted from the continuous battles. Hongying, I'll carry you, Chai Xiao quickly said. Qi Hongying did not refuse. She was really exhausted. Otherwise, she would not have admitted defeat. Chai Xiao laughed as he carried Qi Hongying on his back. He placed his hands naturally on Qi Hongying's surprisingly flexible thighs. Chai Xiao was smiling when he turned around to leave. Zhu Tui suddenly felt that he had done a good deed. This should be one of the good deeds he did. Below the stage, Che Zan, who had suffered countless blows in his heart, had already left silently. After watching these few battles, he no longer had the confidence to fight Zhu Tui. Zhu Tui felt a little pity when Che Zan left. He had wanted to fight with Che Zan. I'll find another opportunity in a few days. My mind power has been mostly expended by Qi Hongying today. Actually, if Qi Hongying had been able to last 5 more minutes during her 5th battle with him today, Zhu Tui would have run out of mind power. Chapter 107, To Prove. Friday was a training day for reflexes. It was still in the training building for the speed of reflexes. The main speaker was naturally Professor Luo Shifeng. Students, this is the second time you are going through a lesson on reflexes. I've already taught you the training method. A person's reflexes had to be enhanced through long-term training. There were no shortcuts to that. With the accumulation of training, activating reaction-type genetic base points was a natural course of action. However, I have another question to tell you before I inject you with the nerve acceleration elixir. It's the difference between the speed of your reflexes and the speed of your body. Professor Luo Shifeng was very strict in class. He spoke non-stop the moment the lesson started. Increasing the speed of your reflexes would greatly enhance your abilities. However, when the speed of your reflexes reaches a certain level, the enhancement to your abilities would become smaller. Over here, there is an important parameter, the speed at which your body reacts. Let me give you an example. When the speed of your reflexes has increased to 10 milliseconds, theoretically, you should be able to react 100 times within a second. However, can you quickly flick your fingers 100 times a second if you reflect this reaction speed onto your fingers? No one should be able to do it a year later, when your reflexes reach 10 milliseconds. If you want to do that, you have to increase the reaction speed of your body. That means increasing your control over your body. The teachers in other classes will naturally teach you that. What I want to say is that you still have to train your reflexes a year later. Based on the current data, one would benefit the most if their reflexes can reach 10 milliseconds. However, according to our research, if we continue to train and enhance our reflexes after they reach 10 milliseconds, the speed of our reflexes would benefit our bodies. The enhancement might not be that obvious, but once a person's reflexes and body reflexes reach that level, every little enhancement is extremely important. There's one more thing. The reaction speed is much more important to the mystery branch students. After a student's reaction speed in the extreme branch institute reaches a certain level, it would be limited by the speed of their body's reaction. There would not be much of an improvement. However, the mind power of a mystery branch student would not be affected in this manner. Alright, that's all for today's theory. We'll continue with today's training. As usual, we'll test for a basic value and administer the nerve's acceleration elixir ourselves before we go through our training. Also, students who have any other questions can ask them individually after the training starts, Luo Shifeng said. The female students did not have that much of a reaction after being administered with the nerve's acceleration elixir for the second time. Zhu Tui, who was familiar with the process, first tested his reflexes. 49 milliseconds. It had increased since he activated the second reaction speed-related genetic base point. Then, Zhu Tui administered the nerve acceleration elixir to himself. Zhu Tui did not start training immediately after he was administered with the elixir. Instead, he actively pressed on the bell to ask his question. He had just taken a sip of the red date tea in his thermos when Luo Shifeng heard the notification for the bell. He looked toward the number displayed as a warning. Training square number 699. Then, Luo Shifeng saw Zhu Tui. Luo Shifeng had a deep impression of the student who won 3 bottles of energy restoration elixirs from his previous class. After all, his standard of living during this week had clearly become much simpler. It was all because of this student called Zhu Tui. Of course, as a teacher, Luo Shifeng would not be biased toward Zhu Tui because of that. However, he was still a human. He could not avoid feeling a little uncomfortable. However, Luo Shifeng still quickly walked over when he heard Zhu Tui's question. Professor Luo, I wish to know if there are any more rewards today. Zhu Tui's question was a little abrupt. This caused Luo Shifeng to knit his brows. Zhu Tui, if you are asking meaningless questions by pressing the bell, you would forever lose the chance to ask questions in my class. After he said that, Luo Shifeng added, the reason I set up a reward in the previous lesson was to stimulate the students who had just started their training on how to react quickly. However, training your reflexes would allow you to have a higher chance of survival in future battles. If you came to speed up your reflexes because of the reward I set up, then I think that you are starting from the wrong place, Luo Shifeng criticized. I'm sorry, Professor Luo. I was just curious. Zhu Tui apologized sincerely. Of course, he was not just curious. He really wanted to know if Luo Shifeng would set another reward. He would definitely think of a way to obtain them if they were set up. His financial situation had deteriorated drastically after he purchased the 5 alloy silver pills a few days ago. Before Luo Shifeng could flare up, Zhu Tui quickly asked him another question. Professor Luo, my real problem is that we have discovered 7 genetic base points relating to the speed of a person's reflexes. Then are there any undiscovered genetic base points relating to reflexes and speed? Zhu Tui's rather serious question managed to suppress Luo Shifeng's anger. After all, Zhu Tui's performance during the previous lesson had been rather startling. In theory, yes. However, it has been 37 years since we discovered the last genetic base points relating to reflexes. There had been no new discoveries in the past 37 years. The probability of discovering new genetic base points relating to reaction speed in the future was very small. I think that the more important thing for you to do now is to activate the genetic base points that are related to your reflexes, not something like this. You are too ambitious. In Luo Shifeng's opinion, the words, too ambitious, was a heavy criticism. He hoped that he could remind the student in front of him. The Waxia Genetic Evolution College had many geniuses. However, every year, many geniuses would be delayed by such unrealistic ideas. Professor Luo, if I tell you that I might have discovered a brand new genetic base point related to reaction speed that I have never seen before, would you be able to provide me with guidance and research assistance? Zhu Tui's words were startling. Hearing this, Luo Shifeng had the urge to turn and leave. He felt that Zhu Tui was dreaming. He was being ridiculous. He had only trained his reflexes for a few days, yet he was already trying to discover genetic base points relating to speed. Wasn't that a fool's dream? However, with a responsible mindset, Luo Shifeng felt that he had to try and save this whimsical student in front of him. This was his responsibility as a teacher. Zhu Tui, your thoughts? Professor Luo, take a look at the reaction speed of your reflexes that I tested just now. Zhu Tui immediately handed him a reaction speed report. Luo Shifeng froze when he scanned the area. 49 milliseconds. He remembered Zhu Tui's results clearly because of the 3 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs. On Friday, Zhu Tui's initial reaction speed was 180 milliseconds. He managed to obtain 3 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs as a reward after class with his 112 milliseconds. Last week, Luo Shifeng thought that it was because Zhu Tui was a little luckier than the rest of the students. It might also be because of his habits of training his reflexes that he activated a genetic base point that was related to reflexes on the spot and took the reward away. However, it had only been 7 days. Zhu Tui's reaction speed increased from 112 milliseconds to 49 milliseconds. It increased his score by 63 milliseconds. The enhancement was too great. If there was such an enhancement, it must be because Zhu Tui had activated another genetic base point related to reflexes. However, what was the point? Based on his decades of experience, even though this was rare, it was not uncommon. The enhancement is not bad. You have to continue working hard. However, this has nothing to do with the discovery of new genetic base points relating to reflexes and speed. I think that you should be more practical. Luo Shifeng tried his best to save Zhu Tui, a student. It was his responsibility. Professor Luo, I know what you mean, but I still have a few questions that I need to tell you. I hope that you can hear me out. Zhu Tui interrupted Luo Shifeng. However, his attitude was very sincere. Zhu Tui spoke without waiting for Luo Shifeng to say anything. He was afraid that Luo Shifeng would turn around and leave. If that was the case, he might not be able to develop his research plan. Professor Luo, I am a specially recruited student from the School of Enlightened Mind, Professor in Shaozu. I have long activated my introspection ability, Zhu Tui proactively explained. Luo Shifeng raised his brows. He had heard about the specific requirements of a specially recruited student from the School of Enlightened Mind. However, what did this have to do with the School of Neural Reaction? Professor Luo, during this lesson, I am confident that I can activate another genetic base point related to reflexes to greatly enhance the speed of my reflexes. If I can activate another genetic base point related to reaction speed during this lesson, would you be able to guide me in my research on new genetic base points related to reaction speed? Zhu Tui finally revealed his true goal after circling around the topic for some time. Luo Shifeng was not confused. On the contrary, a professor who could become a member of the Waxia Genetic Evolution College was definitely an intelligent individual. At this moment, he understood what Zhu Tui meant. What Zhu Tui roughly meant was that with his introspection ability, he might have found the scope or direction of a new reaction-type genetic base point. However, he did not know how to research that. Thus, they had used this method to gain Luo Shifeng's trust and ask him for help with their research. Luo Shifeng's heart skipped a beat when he thought of that. He could not wait for such research. This was research that could leave its mark in history. You're not joking. Luo Shifeng was giving his final confirmation. He did not want to be tricked by a student and become the laughingstock of the school. Professor Luo, I don't want to be kicked out of the class by you forever. I am serious. Everything I said is true. I suggested this idea to prove myself, Zhu Tui said. Luo Shifeng considered it for a moment, then nodded. I know how unique the enlightened mind type is. However, I have to see you prove it to me with my own eyes. I'll believe you if you do it. I'll research it with you. Luo Shifeng turned to leave after he finished speaking. Thank you, Professor Luo, for giving me this opportunity. Chapter 108, Zhu Tui's Condition 1. Let's go to the teacher's office upstairs. That place has the highest level of high-frequency sensory lasers. It also has an exclusive communication channel with the supercomputer of the Waxia Genetic Evolution College, the Shenong. Luo Shifeng, who had just turned to leave, quickly walked toward Zhu Tui. Zhu Tui did not say anything more about Professor Luo Shifeng's reaction. He only nodded and followed him. Professor Luo's actions meant that he believed Zhu Tui. The students who were standing guard around Zhu Tui were all shocked. After hearing a few words, the students suddenly realized that the student who had taken away Professor Luo's reward just by sleeping during the previous lesson seemed to be too far away from them. Had he reached a point where he could fool Professor Luo into doing research with him? Of course, many students were curious as to whether or not he was bluffing. Zhu Tui was brought into the teacher's office by Luo Shifeng. He attracted a little attention and all kinds of thoughts in the large classroom of 1,500 students. However, the commotion did not last long. It did not even last a minute. There was no doubt about the ability and habits of the students who managed to enter the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. Otherwise, they would not have been able to enter the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. Here, yes, here. I want to test your reaction speed again. I want to test it 3 times in a row for accuracy. You can only start your verification after that. Do you have any problems? Luo Shifeng asked. No problem. If you can wait, Professor Luo, I would like to train for an hour before attempting to activate the next genetic base point relating to reaction speed. The genetic base points that I obtained from my previous reaction speed are still a little short of the limit. Of course, I also wanted to more accurately sense the completely new reaction-type genetic base points, Zhu Tui said. No problem. Continue training for an hour to obtain an average reaction speed. That would be more accurate and have more scientific meaning. Luo Shifeng had already entered a state of scientific research from his teaching state. The first characteristic of a professor when they entered a state of scientific research was that they had to be rigorous. All right, I'll begin then. Zhu Tui did not say anything more. He immediately activated the high-level laser array transmitter in Luo Shifeng's teacher's office. They had used 4 laser array launchers during the training just now. However, Luo Shifeng was using 24 mixed laser array launchers of different lengths. As soon as it was activated, Zhu Tui realized that the high-frequency sensory lasers emitted by the 24-headed hybrid laser array were even more disorganized and strange. Even their speed was not fixed. Zhu Tui made several mistakes in a row. It caused the reaction speed he obtained from the first test to drop to 53 milliseconds. However, Zhu Tui quickly adapted to the speed after his first training. The reaction speed of his second training returned to 49 milliseconds. Outside the window, Luo Shifeng looked at the notifications coming from the training equipment in his teacher's office through his communication device. He then read through Zhu Tui's training records from last week's lesson and started comparing them one by one. He wanted to see if there was any possibility that the student was faking it. 30 minutes later, Zhu Tui's reaction speed had increased to 48 milliseconds in the teacher's office. Luo Shifeng also confirmed one thing. The reaction speed of this student should be real. There was no possibility of him faking it. The possibility of him fooling the supercomputer, Shenong, 10 times in a row was too slim. Of course, anyone who could fool him would definitely be a genius. In the teacher's office, Zhu Tui, who was constantly undergoing training, entered the illusory introspective state from time to time. He once again searched for and confirmed the 2 genetic base points related to reaction speed that he had just discovered. In the 100 years of the Great Genetic Era, there were thousands of genetic base points that were newly discovered and researched into specific abilities. However, there were also many scholars and professors who died or crippled due to their research. Research represented the unknown. The unknown was often associated with danger. Thus, after being administered with the nerve acceleration elixir today, Zhu Tui had to once again confirm and analyze the 2 new genetic base points he discovered that were related to reaction speed. After all, he was experimenting on himself by initiating the research. The reason Zhu Tui chose to cooperate with Professor Luo Shifeng was based on another important goal. The genetic committee had a universal requirement for the determination of the results of all of the genetic base points. Reproducibility of individuals. One would not be able to conclude that their research on the genetic base point that activated this ability type was fruitful. Other individuals have to obtain the results of your research and successfully reproduce the results before they can be recognized. It was not difficult for Zhu Tui to activate this new reaction type genetic base points himself. What was difficult was how to use a scientific method to come up with a method that would allow others to find and activate these genetic base points. That method would be regarded as a scientific achievement. That was the difficult part. Zhu Tui had no experience in that regard. He had no experience at all. Thus, he had to obtain Professor Luo Shifeng's help. Another 30 minutes passed. Zhu Tui's reaction speed remained at 48 milliseconds. It had not increased at all. He felt that the speed at which the previous genetic base points he activated increased, his reflexes had almost reached their limit. He could activate the next one. Professor Luo Shifeng entered the teacher's office after he sensed that Zhu Tui glanced at him. Chapter 109, Zhu Tui's Condition 2. Is it about to start? Yes. Zhu Tui took out a few bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs that he had prepared beforehand and waved them at Professor Luo. Professor Luo, I need to consume these. Does this count as the start of our research? Can these be reimbursed when the time comes? Luo Shifeng looked at the serious Zhu Tui and suddenly understood. Zhu Tui had not asked him if he had any rewards today out of curiosity. He really wanted to obtain his reward. He wanted to win a few more bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs from him. Luo Shifeng did not want to live a simple life like the previous week. Of course, the rewards in class were out of his own pocket. It was different for research, especially after he obtained results from his research. If you can prove all of this later and I start this research topic with you, then all of your expenses during the research can be reimbursed. There will be even more rewards if the research is successful. Luo Shifeng made it clear. Alright, Professor Luo, I'll drink as much as I want. Zhu Tui, who had consumed a level E energy restoration elixir, sat cross-legged on the ground again and entered a state of sleep like he did during the previous lesson. This should be a unique training method of the School of Enlightened Mind. Luo Shifeng felt a little embarrassed. Fortunately, he did not succeed in criticizing Zhu Tui for sleeping in front of everyone. Otherwise, he would have made a fool of himself. How could a professor like him think that the special training method of other students was sleeping? It would be strange if people did not laugh at him if this got out. From this moment on, Luo Shifeng started to believe that what Zhu Tui said was true. Zhu Tui would naturally not activate the two reaction-type genetic base points that had not been discovered by the outside world. There would be no way to research it if he activated it directly. What Zhu Tui activated now was the third reaction-type genetic base point located above his spine. The speed of his reflexes was also a genetic ability. However, no genetic ability chain was formed. That meant that he could activate either one first. It would enhance his reflexes to a certain extent. Thus, they did not have the characteristics of the load of genetic base points on the genetic ability chain. In the genetic ability chain, the lower the rank of the genetic base points, the harder it was to activate them. Zhu Tui only spent an hour and 15 minutes, consumed 2 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs, and successfully activated his third reaction-type genetic base point. Luo Shifeng immediately returned to the office when he saw Zhu Tui stand up from his sleep. "You activated it already?" Zhu Tui nodded. "That fast?" After realizing that his question was useless, Professor Luo Shifeng casually pointed at the training device. "Let's test it out first. It's intuitive." "All right." Zhu Tui walked toward the 24-headed hybrid laser array transmitter without hesitation. He tapped on the button and started the machine. The training results were released 3 minutes later. Luo Shifeng snatched over the report card before Zhu Tui could look at it. The 23-millisecond mark on the training report was exceptionally glaring to Luo Shifeng. The increase was not large. It was only 25 milliseconds. However, as a professor from the School of Neurology, Luo Shifeng knew that very well. When a person's reaction speed was raised to less than 50 milliseconds, they had to go through a long period of training to enhance their reaction speed every millisecond. It was the same even if they were administered with a nerve acceleration elixir. Under normal circumstances, a person's reaction speed would increase by more than 10 milliseconds within a short time only after they activated a new genetic base point related to reflexes. In other words, Zhu Tui had proven himself. "I need an average score that is more scientifically meaningful. You can train 9 more times," Luo Shifeng said. This time, Luo Shifeng did not leave. Instead, he stayed in his teacher's office and watched as Zhu Tui went through his training. He started to take notes as he trained. 30 minutes later, Luo Shifeng looked at his average score. His lips were tightly pursed, but his eyes were filled with surprise. The average reflexes are 21.4 milliseconds, while the best reflexes are 21 milliseconds. Zhu Tui's optimal reaction speed was 21 milliseconds. That was the sustained enhancement effect of activating a new reaction-type genetic base point. After he finished reading the report card, Luo Shifeng looked at Zhu Tui and said, "Zhu Tui, you have already proven your theory. At the same time, you have also convinced me. If you have no objections, we can begin to discuss this research project further." Luo Shifeng did not drag things out at all. "First, you have to tell me where in your body are the completely new reaction-type genetic base points you discovered." Luo Shifeng, who had entered a meditative state, asked. "The head," Zhu Tui answered. Luo Shifeng nodded. "More than a decade ago, a researcher from the School of Neurology published a conjecture regarding reaction-type genetic base points. According to the current research progress, if we can still discover new genetic base points related to reflexes, then there's a high chance that these new genetic base points are in the head." After a pause, Luo Shifeng suddenly asked, "You've read about this conjecture?" Zhu Tui shook his head. "It's my first time hearing it." Luo Shifeng looked at Zhu Tui in a daze. He suddenly laughed. "That's right. Even professors like us have not read many of those extremely professional conjectures." While he was laughing, Luo Shifeng suddenly extended his hand toward Zhu Tui. "Let us get to know each other again. My name is Luo Shifeng, and I am the chairman of the School of Neurology at the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. I am also the team leader of the research group that is going to explore a brand new set of reaction-type genetic base points. Welcome to the research project team. Zhu Tui did not shake Luo Shifeng's outstretched hand. The moment he did, the cooperation would begin. He would benefit greatly regardless of whether or not he could obtain any results. However, he had to clarify some things in advance. Professor Luo, I have a condition. Tell me. I knew you had conditions. Luo Shifeng could tell from the start that Zhu Tui was deliberately displaying his abilities to him to seek the possibility of a collaboration with him. Under normal circumstances, Zhu Tui could have secretly activated the ability himself. He did not have to experiment on himself. He most likely had an additional goal. I have no problems joining this research. However, if there are any results, I want to be the first researcher or be juxtaposed with the first researcher. Furthermore, I am an intern researcher at the Waxia Genetic Research Institute No. 14, Zhu Tui said. Luo Shifeng furrowed his brows slightly when he heard that. He had no problems regarding the matter of the first researcher. He had this bit of integrity. However, there was a problem with Zhu Tui's status in this research. Are you sure? If you do that, more of the benefits and glory would belong to the Research Institute No. 14, not you. You are merely an intern researcher at the Research Institute No. 14. With respect, the benefits you can obtain from this should be very little, Luo Shifeng said. The corner of Zhu Tui's lips twitched when he heard this. He laughed. Professor Luo, I think you still don't know. In our Research Institute No. 14, only Professor Xiaozu and I left. 2 people, Research Institute No. 14, and Xiaozu. Oh, I remember now. Luo Shifeng seemed to have thought of something and nodded. You have no problems with that, right? No problem, Luo Shifeng agreed. Professor Luo, I hope that these promises can be implemented onto paper or documents in a legal sense, Zhu Tui added. Luo Shifeng, who had wanted to say something, rubbed his forehead. His head hurt. The little guy in front of him should not have been through the harsh beatings of society. Why was he so scheming? He was even more careful than him. He was doubting a great professor like him. It was too much. He had to teach the lad a lesson if he had the chance in the future. He actually dared to suspect a professor like him. No problem. We'll sign the agreement immediately. Luo Shifeng cursed inwardly, but he quickly agreed. Chapter 110, She Wants You to Whip Her, 1. Honestly, Zhu Tui was very unfamiliar with the subject of research. Furthermore, figuring out a method that suited him and finding a method that suited someone else through his experience were 2 completely different concepts. Currently, what Zhu Tui and Luo Shifeng needed to do was to research on Zhu Tui and find a way to activate a completely new reaction-related genetic base point. If Zhu Tui had to do it himself, he might not understand the first step at all. However, Professor Luo Shifeng had instantly become Zhu Tui's guiding light now. First, I want to have a general understanding of the new neural type genetic base points that you have discovered. I'll ask and you'll answer. We can communicate on the spot if you have any questions. Luo Shifeng was very good at researching. In the Waxia Genetic Evolution College, it was not difficult to become a professor based on your individual strength and accumulation. However, it was impossible to become the head of a department without producing exceptional research results. I've checked through the materials. The School of Enlightened Mind has a way of training how to focus your senses. Focus means to activate. What I want to know is whether you can activate your genetic base points only once with no interruptions during the process, right? Or can you stop at any time after you start? Luo Shifeng raised the first question. I can stop at any time. Luo Shifeng recorded his findings. Second question. Does administering the nerve acceleration elixir help you with your discovery of this new reaction type genetic base point? This concerns the batches of tests that we are going to undertake. It's helpful. I only managed to faintly sense this reaction type genetic base points after I was administered with the nerve acceleration elixir. As for the rest, I'm not too sure. Zhu Tui communicated honestly. I have a question that I have to confirm. Some of the unique high-frequency stimuli in the outside world should have an effect on the completely new reaction-type genetic base points that you discovered. We will have to test out the specific stimulating method one by one. However, if there is really a stimulus, can you feel or notice it? Even if it is the slightest of feelings. That is very important. It concerns the speed of our research, Luo Shifeng said. I should be able to Luo Shifeng frowned. We are conducting research. I need a confirmed answer. Yes or no, not an ambiguous answer like that. This will determine our research direction and research plan. It is extremely important. Yes, Zhu Tui gave an affirmative answer after he thought about it. I want to know. This interaction lasted almost an hour. Zhu Tui's interaction with Luo Shifeng was only completed when the class was about to end. I already have a preliminary research plan, but I still need to supplement it carefully. However, our research can begin now. Based on the first deduction, this might be the best time for you to conduct our research after you are administered with the nerve acceleration elixir. Therefore, our research will begin now. First, I have to stimulate your nervous system according to your different body parts. Do you have any problems with that? Luo Shifeng said. After obtaining Zhu Tui's approval, Luo Shifeng immediately brought Zhu Tui into the research center of the School of Neurology, which was located behind his office. There were not many people. Only a few teachers were conducting research. Luo Shifeng casually called over a rather tall teacher. She was female. Bring him along for the segmented reflexes training. This female teacher could only be considered average looking. However, she was not ugly. She looked tall. She was only a little shorter than Zhu Tui. Zhu Tui estimated that she was 1.75 meters tall. A good-looking person could conceal 100 things from an ugly person. A pair of long legs were enough to make her look attractive. This segmented training for your reflexes is harmless to you. On the contrary, it can also increase the speed of your reflexes and the reactions of various parts of your body. However, it still took a large amount of time. As it was stimulating, you might even feel a little uncomfortable. It's also because of this that it can't be widely used. You can stand it, right? Luo Shifeng said. As a man, what's a little hardship? Zhu Tui patted his chest loudly. He had a confident expression. That's good. However, not only do you have to endure the discomfort, but you also have to use your introspection technique to sense your surroundings carefully. If the segmented reflexes stimulating training has any effect on the genetic base point that you are researching, you must immediately tell Miss Lu to record it down. Then, repeat the process over and over again. Remember the stimulating areas and methods that would affect the genetic base point that you are researching. That will be your main mission for the next few days. After he said this, Luo Shifeng looked outside. I'm going to choose experimental volunteers from different control groups. The preparation time might be 3 to 4 days. I hope that you can hurry. Luo Shifeng was indeed an expert when it came to research. He managed to arrange everything for Zhu Tui in a short time. No problem. After receiving an affirmative answer, Luo Shifeng turned to leave. However, he had just taken 2 steps when he returned. Oh, yes, Miss Lu, his name is Zhu Tui. He is a collaborator in one of my new research projects. More accurately, he is the leader and I am the support. At the same time, he is also a researcher from the Genetic Research Institute's Institute 14. Work with him and do your basic research, Luo Shifeng returned and explained. Chapter 111, She wants you to whip her, too. Zhu Tui could hear the hidden meaning behind those words. He was probably afraid that Miss Lu would really take Zhu Tui as a student and affect the research plan. Thus, Luo Shifeng deliberately omitted the word, intern, when he introduced them. There was a world of difference between the levels of an intern researcher and a researcher. Indeed, Miss Lu was extremely shocked. She had seen many researchers at the Genetic Research Institute. However, she had never seen a student become a researcher at the Genetic Research Institute. Hello, Researcher Zhu. My surname is Lu, and my full name is Lu Lan. I am a teaching assistant from the School of Neurology. Hello, Miss Lu. They had greeted each other and could be considered to have gotten to know each other. Even though Zhu Tui had just started to interact with Luo Shifeng, he had already learned a little from him. Time. Since he had to do it, he had to hurry. He could not waste time. Miss Lu, if you have no problems, we can start now, Zhu Tui said. This way, Researcher Zhu, all of the subdivisional neural stimulation devices in the Research Institute of the School of Neurology are highly refined instruments. Furthermore, they are directly aimed at the surface of the body to be activated. So, before we begin, we need you to clean up and put on your research clothes. Also. After she said this, Lulan suddenly looked Zhu Tui up and down and said, "You would have to deal with your body hair if it is rather abundant." Zhu Tui froze. She even had to put it that way. Does it specifically mean certain body parts, or? Zhu Tui was a little embarrassed. Lulan suddenly reacted. She instinctively stared at a certain spot on Zhu Tui's body and quickly shook her head. Not the specific body parts. What I'm referring to was the density of hair in the common area. Under normal circumstances, a man's head and other bodily functions were not outside of this subdivision. Of course, it was hard to say if they were involved in research. You would have to deal with it if you need it in the later stages. Zhu Tui instinctively clenched his legs together. He felt a little resistant. If the experiment really reached that stage, he could accept having his head shaved off. However, cleaning his body meant taking a shower. After a comfortable hot bath, Zhu Tui wore sandals and a pair of scientific research shorts that perfectly displayed his physique. He was then brought by Lulan and put on the first piece of stimulating equipment that she had brought along. Zhu Tui suddenly froze when he saw Lulan. She had become shorter. She had almost been on par with Zhu Tui just now. They were lined up so close that she reached Zhu Tui's eyebrows. She was now shorter than Zhu Tui's head. She was only 1.63 meters tall. He glanced at Lulan, who was wearing the same slippers as him. Zhu Tui immediately understood. Heightening insoles. She had worn taller shoes just now. She must have grown by more than 10 centimeters. What a magical feeling. Researcher Zhu, there are different stages of stimulation. The intensity of the stimulation will gradually increase during the process. It might be a little uncomfortable. If you can't take it, press on the button and it will stop instantly. If there are no problems, we can start with the neck. No problem. Zhu Tui quickly agreed to the request. However, he started to regret his decision a few minutes later. He even felt like he was better off dead. He had no problem with a slight pain. He could also withstand it if it was several times stronger. After all, Zhu Tui had also been injured in battle. However, it was itchy. What the FCK? The itch was too much for him. He experienced a variety of sensations. The itchiness and pain alternated. He felt like he was in the ninth heaven of water and fire. For the first time, Zhu Tui felt that the novels he read in the past, where they told him about the 9 heavens of water and fire being an awesome feeling, was all a lie. It was a complete lie. Zhu Tui only wanted to choose between fire and ice if he had a choice. Unfortunately, he had no choice. He had to endure it. Occasionally, the sudden stimulation of the electric current would cause Zhu Tui to twitch violently. Could this be the price of scientific research? Research was a lonely process. Many times, scientific research felt more like an ongoing trial and error. Out of the thousands of trials and errors, he would succeed if he got it right even once. That was what Zhu Tui was doing now. Ordinary people did not have introspection, much less illusory introspection. What Zhu Tui needed to do was use scientific research to find a way for an ordinary person to sense or activate these genetic base points. However, according to Professor Luo Shifeng, the scientific research that Zhu Tui had to go through was dozens of times easier than what they had experienced in the past. The research that they had done in the past was a trial and error process. The money and effort they expended were not on the same level. After all, they had to determine if a direction was right or wrong after they tested it out. If their judgment was wrong, the money and effort they wasted would be astronomical. Before this, such a situation was common. At Zhu Tui's side, he only needed to continuously experiment and find the correct answer. There was no need to verify it. That was because Zhu Tui's consciousness was a natural judgment machine. Zhu Tui once again experienced the hardships of being a researcher in the research center of the School of Neurology. They did not rest at noon. As an important tool for his experiment, even his lunch was ordered for him by another assistant teacher. Zhu Tui was still a student. His time was limited. He had to make the best use of his time. Zhu Tui, who had become a little sensitive to the pain and itchiness, was rather happy eating a free meal. After all, he had saved himself another meal, right? However, today's segmented nerve stimulation experiment only lasted 3 hours before it stopped. 3 hours was a threshold. The sensitivity of a subject's body would gradually decrease if the period of nerve stimulation in their body exceeded 3 hours. This would affect the effects of the experiment. Thus, the first day ended in 3 hours. Zhu Tui left after he reviewed the trial records. He still had classes in the afternoon. Assistant Lu Lan was the one who sent Zhu Tui off when he left. When she was sending him off, Lu Lan, who had changed into a new pair of shoes, miraculously reached a height of 1.76 meters. That's a pair of fake long legs. They had 2 theory classes in the afternoon, multiform genetic evolution. Zhu Tui did not go to class. Instead, he went straight to the library. He found the relevant textbooks and materials in the library and started flipping through them. He flipped through the pages extremely quickly. Basically, he had to flip to another page every 10 seconds. He spent more than an hour flipping through the first-year textbooks of the multiform genetic evolution and half of the second-year textbooks. There was still 30 minutes before class ended. Zhu Tui brought his small notebook back to the classroom. He would find an opportunity to capture the teacher and ask for guidance. He had to consult them at a time like this for the things he did not understand during the reading process just now. Zhu Tui suddenly felt a little more relaxed after he understood the questions in his head. He had already completed the first-year course of the multiform genetic evolution. Not only did he remember it backward, but he also understood it. Could this be the strength of the school of enlightened mind? Not only do I have an amazing memory, but my comprehension ability is also incredible. Zhu Tui felt a little smug. He would be able to finish most of the theory lessons soon. He was about to return to his dormitory after class. He had not seen his roommate, Luo Murong, for a few days. Zhu Tui wanted to learn more about genetic ancient martial arts from him. However, Zhu Tui received a call from Chai Xiao just after class. "Brother, come to the A44 competition room in the building. I've already reserved a room." "Brother Chai, do you still want to fight?" Zhu Tui was startled. "It's not me, it's your sister-in-law. She misses your whip. She wants you to whip her." Perhaps he had thought of something. Chai Xiao quickly added, "Something happened. She wants to use your mental whip to train herself." Chapter 112, The Exchange Group. Actual Combat Building, Arena A44. Chai Xiao and Qi Hongying were already there when Zhu Tui arrived. Furthermore, judging from the empty bubble tea cup in front of Qi Hongying, it had been some time since they arrived. This person is so eager to be whipped. "Brother, you're finally here. Brother, are we going to train now?" Chai Xiao said directly. Zhu Tui did not understand the situation. He looked at Chai Xiao and Qi Hongying, who were walking over, and asked, "Brother Chai, Senior Qi, what exactly is going on? I am not very proficient at using my mental whip. I don't know if whipping someone for an extended period of time would cause permanent damage to their mind." "I've asked the teacher. I've also consulted a vice-chairman of your mystery branch. Under normal circumstances, being continuously attacked by mind power would not cause permanent mind damage. The only way to cause permanent mental damage is to instantly be hit by a mental attack several times the normal limit." Today, Qi Hongying had changed into a pair of tall, dark green battle boots. She looked extremely heroic. He noticed that Chai Xiao was also wearing a pair of black high-top combat boots. It was a matching set. Zhu Tui was silently fed with sweetness just by looking at them. Zhu Tui suddenly thought about the incident 2 days ago. Could it be that the series of good deeds he did had caused a fundamental change in the relationship between Chai Xiao and Qi Hongying? Did Chai Xiao succeed, or did he make major progress? Zhu Tui felt that Chai Xiao had to treat him to a meal after he completed his training. He would be letting himself down if he did not take advantage of the situation. That works too. However, Senior Qi, I do not understand. Why did you specially come to be whipped by the mind power? Based on what I know, this doesn't feel good, does it? It feels worse than being beaten up, right? Zhu Tui asked. That is indeed the case. However, it is also a must. Qi Hongying glanced at Chai Xiao. Chai Xiao quickly turned on his communication device and projected a video. Look at this battle video first. In the video, 2 people were engaged in battle. Zhu Tui deduced the identities of the two people fighting based on the style of their clothes and the flags they were waving even without Chai Xiao's explanation. One of them was clearly a young man from the Indian sector. His turban attracted a lot of attention. The other person should be a young man from the Korean Star sector in the Wire sector. The two of them were standing at a standard distance of 15 meters. The black-haired teenager from the Korean Star sector should be an extreme branch fighter. He was extremely fast. As soon as the battle started, he shot toward the young man from the India sector like a snake. However, only an instant later, the black-haired teenager from Korean Star district suddenly convulsed violently and fell onto the ground. The teenager from the Indian sector charged forward and slid the dagger that he was holding in his hand to the side. Blood instantly splattered everywhere. He slit his throat. The next scene was a little chaotic. The emergency personnel and the teachers pounced onto the stage. The scene changed. This time, it was a young man from the Korean Star sector of the mystery branch who was going up on stage. He was a rare ice element superb individual. The moment he got onto the stage, he immediately attacked the young man from the India sector until he was flustered. However, during this time, the body of the young man from the mystery branch trembled 3 times in a row. On the 4th time, the ice element superb individual from the Korean Star sector fell onto the ground. The young man from the India sector pounced forward again. He even wanted to slit his throat. However, this time, the hosts of the Korean Star sector managed to stop them in time. He did not fall into the hands of the young man from the India sector. The young man from the India sector had won 5 consecutive battles. He successfully slit their throats twice. Under current medical conditions, they would not die after their throats were slit as long as they were treated in time. However, that would be a lifelong nightmare for the participants. I think this is a real battle in school. Why is this lad so cruel? He dared to kill someone on the spot. This was Zhu Tui's first reaction after he finished watching the video. That is permitted in battle, Chai Xiao said. The abilities of genetic newcomers cannot be compared with those of humans in the past. In the past, ordinary humans were limited to their abilities. Even if they had been through professional training, it was very difficult to kill or injure someone with the bare hands when they had protective gear. However, it was different for genetic newcomers. They could instantly injure and kill someone. Under exceptional circumstances, the teacher in charge might not be able to stop them in time. Back then, the genetic committee had also restricted the intensity of their battles. However, to genetic newcomers, sparring and actual combat were meaningless once the intensity of the battle was restricted. You had to hold back half of your strength when you punched out, and you had to be wary of injuring your opponent. There was no point in fighting in such a situation. The mystery branch was even harder. There was a time when superb individuals with immense destructive power like the fire and lightning attributes did not dare to use their abilities because they were afraid that they would injure their opponents in battle. However, the situation would be completely different once they were on a mission or on the battlefield. After that, the Blue Star Genetic Committee issued a clear request that there were no restrictions on the intensity of their exchanges. However, they have to be equipped with high-standard defensive equipment. Furthermore, powerful teachers have to preside over the battle and rescue them to minimize casualties. Chai Xiao paused for a moment after he said that. Actually, it is just like that in our school, especially during the battles for the Donghua list. There are often incidents of serious injuries or even crippling. There are even deaths occasionally. However, when our school was fighting for the Donghua list, we were directly equipped with the standard battle equipment used by combat units. The defensive capabilities are sufficiently high. The teacher presiding over the competition was also powerful. Thus, it was common for people to be injured during the competition for the Donghua list. However, it was rare for people to be severely injured. Of course, if that really happens, that is a risk that we have to bear when we fight for the Donghua list, Chai Xiao said. Why does it look like this guy from the India sector is deliberately killing people? Zhu Tui knitted his brows. If you can't even take on such a small risk, then you should just obediently become a clerk and give up on the path of genetic evolution. Chi Hongying walked over with her high-top combat boots. This person's name is Azari. He is a genius student from the top-notch New India Genetic Evolution College in the India sector. He is in his 2nd year. Among the second-year students of the new India Genetic Evolution College, the India sector officially announced that he was in the top 10. Recently, he had followed a delegation from the India sector to the Wire sector for an exchange visit. His last battle was in the Korean Star sector. He had crippled 6 of the top second-year students of the Taiji Genetic Evolution College in the Korean Star sector by himself. Their next stop would be the Waxia sector of the Wire sector. When the time comes, this kind of battle exchange would be held at the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. The students participating in the exchange will also be selected from the second-year students of the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. The teacher's request was that the top 100 students in the Year 2 Donghua list had to actively prepare for battle. However, after studying Azari's battle videos, we realized that the mind power attack he had was too strange and rare. It was impossible to guard against it. Currently, the Mystery Branch Institute has not come up with a feasible plan. Our Extreme Branch Institute is also actively preparing for battle. It was only now that I thought about your mental whip. I've asked the teacher. According to what the teacher said, there are only 2 ways to withstand this kind of mind power attack before your cultivation and ability have reached the level of a genetic evolver, Chi Hongying explained. Which 2 methods? Zhu Tui became interested when the topic was brought up. The first is to activate genetic ability chains that can enhance the defense of mind power or mental defenses. However, that was too difficult. A student from the mystery branch might be able to accomplish that after many years. However, it is too difficult for the extreme branch, Chi Hongying said. What's the second method? The second method is simple. Beaten up. Being beaten up by mind power. It was like the iron bone ability of the extreme branch. Actually, all one needed to do was continuously injure the bone before hastening the regeneration and recovery. If this process was repeated continuously, the bones would become stronger. When the stimulation reached a certain level, the relevant genetic base points would be activated and the iron bone's ability would be developed. It was the same for mind power. If I got beaten up too often, I would be able to activate relevant genetic base point abilities. My ability to withstand such mind power damage would definitely be stronger. I would definitely not lose my ability to fight after being taken down with one hit. So, Zhu Tui's eyes widened. He understood what Chi Hongying was thinking. So, we want to borrow your mental whip to temper our ability to withstand mind power attacks as a preparation for battle, Chi Hongying said. Alright, Zhu Tui nodded. Oh yeah, would the other grades be able to take on Azari when the time comes? How did the selection process go? Zhu Tui was actually a little curious and eager after he finished watching the video. He wanted to test out Azari's mental attacks. Based on the principle of equal exchange, only second-year students would be able to participate. Third-year and fourth-year students would definitely not be able to participate. It would be even more embarrassing if they did, Chai Seo said. Zhu Tui was a little disappointed when he heard this answer. Alright, since you understand, let's begin. Use your mental whip to whip him and me. Chi Hongying had a determined expression. Chai Seo's hair stood on end when he heard that. No, no, no. Hongying, you can do this, I won't be joining you. You are ranked near the top of the Donghua list in our second year. You would definitely have a chance to exchange pointers. Forget about me. Chai Seo cowered. No, Chi Hongying was very determined. You have to. Even if you don't have the chance to face the exchange team from the India sector, you also have to temper the endurance of your mind power. If you encounter a similar opponent in the future, the training you undergo today will protect your life in the future. We have to. Chai Seo was a little dumbfounded. He was also a little hesitant. He did not want to be abused. However, without waiting for him to consider anything, Chi Hongying pulled him toward her. Come, whip us hard. Chi Hongying stomped her feet and raised her head. Her simple sentence had a heroic tone. This, directly whip you. Zhu Tui was a little hesitant. Senior Chi, I think that we should look for an opportunity to use mind power as we train. Actually, any mental attack had a distance limit. This could only be seen in actual combat. I think that honing the endurance of your mind power in battle would be better, Zhu Tui said. What Zhu Tui said was true. Of course, he also wanted to use this opportunity to train his practical abilities. If both Chai Xiao and Qi Hongying made use of their full strength in battle, they would be worthy practice partners. That's true, we have to go all out. Qi Hongying thought about it for 3 seconds, then agreed to Zhu Tui's suggestion. I'll go first, then you. 1 match for each of us. I'll put on my protective equipment. Chai Xiao had already secretly sent Zhu Tui a message when Qi Hongying was putting on her protective gear. Brother, remember to hold back when you whip me with your mind power later. You can't cripple me, just whip your sister-in-law as hard as you can. It would be best if you can cripple her. Only then would I have a chance like the day before yesterday. Zhu Tui, who had just received the message, silently nodded toward Chai Xiao. Tell me yourself, how many meals? 3 meals. I'll bring a friend. There's no limit. How's that? TCH, as if that will make me poor. It's a deal. A few minutes later, Zhu Tui's second act of kindness began. Chapter 113, The Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association 1. Zhu Tui spent 2 days in a flurry of activity. He had to go to the Neurology Research Center for 3 hours a day to conduct his research. After class in the afternoon, he still had to head to the competition room to whip Chai Xiao and Qi Hongying. He would expend his mind power every time. Of course, he also benefited greatly. He was almost done with the contents of the technique booklet for controlling and exerting force for the flying sword that Xiaozu had given him. Not only was he almost done, but Zhu Tui also had his own experiences. Of course, despite how busy he was, he did not delay his training at all. From the time he obtained the flying sword from Xiaozu last Sunday to this Sunday, Zhu Tui had activated 3 more genetic base points in the second level of the Mind Concentration Foundation forging technique. Currently, he has activated 5 genetic base points on the second level. Basically, he could activate 1 genetic base point every 2 days. From the looks of it, the speed of his training had not changed much from when he was at the first level. However, in reality, Zhu Tui knew that activating the second level of genetic base points was much slower. The reason why the time it took to activate a genetic base point did not change from the time it took to activate the first level was that Zhu Tui's training efficiency had increased. What affected his training efficiency was his mind power. There was an obvious target for the efficiency of his training. That was the number of level E energy restoration elixirs he could use when he was full of mind power and when he was directing the activation of his genetic base points with his mind power. In the beginning, before he entered the Waxia Genetic Evolution College, Zhu Tui had exhausted a bottle of level E energy restoration elixir during his nightly training. That had been his limit. He had to enter a deep sleep to recover his mind power. After entering the Waxia Genetic Evolution College, as Zhu Tui's mind power grew rapidly, the number of level E energy restoration elixirs that he consumed during his nightly training also increased drastically. He went from 2 bottles to 3. Then to 3.5 bottles. Zhu Tui had consumed 5 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs during his nightly training after he was administered with the genetic transcriptional elixir of the Queen Bee last week and his mind power mutated. As of today, if he was in a state where his mind power was at its peak, he would have used up 6 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs during his nightly training. From this indicator, Zhu Tui's training efficiency should have increased by more than 6 times from before. Compared to a week ago, the efficiency of his training had doubled. At the same time, the time it took to consume a bottle of level E energy restoration elixir also decreased drastically. He needed an hour at the start, 45 minutes later, and half an hour after that. In these 2 days, he would be able to use up a bottle of level E energy restoration elixir in less than half an hour. It was also because of the increase in the efficiency of his training that Zhu Tui was able to activate a second-level genetic base point every 2 days. It was much faster than the speed at which he expected to activate one every 4 to 5 days. The only problem was that Zhu Tui was running out of money for his training. The Level C Rights supplementary card that Xiaozu gave him only cost Zhu Tui $3,750 for a bottle of Level E energy restoration elixir. It did save him a quarter of the money he needed. But he still could not withstand it. Furthermore, the amount of bottles he received from the discount of his low-grade Level C rights was 400 bottles a year. That was a maximum of 40 bottles a month. Based on the current rate of depletion, it was still not enough. Zhu Tui desperately needed to make money. Judging from the current rate of depletion, he would run out of money in a week. Of course, Zhu Tui also had a preliminary idea. He would first try his best to convert all of his resources into strength, then use the strength to make money. Powerful genetic newcomers had more ways of earning money than ordinary people. Zhu Tui, who had been in the school for almost 2 months, was no longer a rookie. He had some understanding of this. Sunday, according to his original plan, he would first head to Research Institute No. 14 to do some maintenance work before heading to the Neurology Research Center for further experiments. There was no such thing as a break in research. However, he had just woken up in the morning when he saw Luo Murong walk out of the washroom. His hair had just been tied up and was tied up with a jade headband. There was still a fiery red bud of an eagle stuck to his forehead. He looked heroic but also a little demonic. Perhaps it was because Luo Murong was in his 3rd year, but he did not stay in the dormitory every day. This was the first time Zhu Tui saw Luo Murong in the morning this week. He immediately remembered something related to the genetic ancient martial arts. Zhu Tui felt that he had to get a deeper understanding of his illusory introspection. He was not worried about his studying energy. Zhu Tui did not know what the other students in the School of Enlightened Mind were like, but he had already displayed the benefits of being in the School of Enlightened Mind. He had an eidetic memory, an exceptional memory, and an exceptional comprehension ability. Of course, it might be because Zhu Tui had activated more genetic base points in his head. It was also because of this that he had already finished self-studying the theory courses for first-year students. He had also learned a portion of the theories for second-year students. Sometimes, Zhu Tui would think that the 3rd year of high school would not have been that hard if he had this ability even when he was in high school. He would become the top student of the top students just by flipping through a book. That was the life Zhu Tui wanted to have. Good morning, Murong. Zhu Tui actively greeted him. Even though Luo Murong's surname was Luo, it felt good to call him Murong. Chapter 114, The Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association 2. Luo Murong, who had just walked out of the washroom, nodded. He then looked back at the washroom thoughtfully. You've done a good job with hygiene this week. I can't find any problems with it. It'll be my turn next week, Luo Murong said. Zhu Tui felt strangely relaxed when he heard those words. It had been almost 2 months since school started. He had finally gotten rid of the great profession of long-term sanitation and cleaning. That's great. Zhu Tui was elated. Oh, yes, Murong, I'm very interested in this genetic ancient martial arts school. I want to understand it in depth and even try to learn it. You should be more familiar with this area. Can you tell me about it? Zhu Tui asked. You want to learn? Are you serious? Luo Murong seemed to be confirming Zhu Tui's attitude. Indeed, I am serious. I have finished reading all of the books in your room. I have a certain level of understanding of genetic ancient martial arts. However, after I tried searching for it, I realized that the cultivation method of genetic ancient martial arts is very difficult to find in the public library. Furthermore, there was a threshold. That's why I wanted to consult you, Zhu Tui said. There is indeed a threshold to your training, but it would depend on which direction you are training in. There is no threshold for genetic ancient martial arts that can enhance your physique and offensive capabilities. There are people who have the ability like the lion's roar. Zhu Tui continued. That's right, Luo Murong nodded. Let me tell you this. There are 2 directions you can take if you want to understand and learn about genetic ancient martial arts. The first direction is to join the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Club in our school, Luo Murong said. Our school has a Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Club. Zhu Tui was shocked. You don't know. This is the first time I'm hearing it from you. That's not right. After school started, they sent people to various colleges and schools where the new students were to promote their recruitment. They had also selected over 400 new members from the batch of new students this year. How could you not know? Luo Murong suddenly stopped in the middle of his sentence. I understand now. The Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Club itself is not that attractive to the Mystery Branch Institute. There would not be a lot of commotion even if they went. Furthermore, you are in the School of Enlightened Mind. You might have been neglected. Zhu Tui listened. He suddenly had the urge to tell the recruiters of the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Club, "I wanted to curse you, but I don't know if I should say it." They had completely disregarded the school of enlightened mind during the recruitment. They deserved to be flogged. "What's the second direction?" Zhu Tui asked. "The second direction is to go to the branch of the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association in the capital," Luo Murong said. "Two directions. Which one do you think I should go to?" Zhu Tui made a comparison. However, he felt that it was better to listen to an insider like Luo Murong. Luo Murong laughed when he heard this. He had a suave smile. Even Zhu Tui felt that he looked handsome with that smile. "The hygiene of the dormitory next week will continue to belong to you." Zhu Tui froze. A string of curses appeared in his mind. He had just thought that he was rid of the occupation of a long-term cleaner, but it had come immediately after. It was simply. Zhu Tui could only nod and accept his fate. With his current cleaning abilities and speed, he would be able to clean up the dormitory in 15 minutes. Mainly, it was because of their hygienic habits that they managed to maintain a decent sanitary condition in the dormitory. He would take it as a break after his training. That's naturally the second direction. Even though the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Club in our school is a semi-official club recognized by the school, in reality, the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Club in our school is merely a stepping stone for the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association. Basically, only students who performed exceptionally well in the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Club would be recommended to the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association for a more systematic and advanced training study. For example, I learned my lion's roar after I entered the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association. However, if you were to head directly to the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association, you would usually be assigned to a beginner class similar to the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Club. You need a referrer if you want to directly come into contact with deeper information. If you want me to be your referrer. At this point, Luo Murong once again shut his mouth. However, the meaning behind his words was clear as day. How could Zhu Tui not know what Luo Murong meant? He could only nod helplessly. "I understand. I'll take over an entire week of dormitory hygiene." "A week is not enough. This will take 2 weeks. Luo Murong raised 2 fingers. "All right, I agree. That means that the sanitation for the next 3 weeks will be yours." Zhu Tui clenched his teeth. He had to accept his fate. Anyway, he had been at it for more than a month. These 3 weeks would not make a difference. "I also know that a Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Master is giving a public lecture in the branch of the capital's Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association today. Only students who had joined the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts School could attend the lessons, including the students of the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Club. As for me, I happen to be a senior member who has the right to directly bring one person in. I'll take care of the hygiene of the dormitory for the next month." Zhu Tui took the initiative to express his stance just as Luo Murong finished speaking. Since he could not avoid being stabbed, he might as well stretch out his neck as soon as possible. "Deal. Perfect." He happily snapped his fingers and entered the room. "Wait for me. I'll bring you along when I'm done. The internal public lecture is in the morning." Since the public lecture was in the morning, Zhu Tui planned to reschedule his meeting. First, he called Professor Luo Shifeng and explained the situation. He set the 3 hours of research time today after 4 in the afternoon. Currently, most of the research was done by Zhu Tui and Lu Lan. Thus, this time adjustment did not affect Professor Luo's romantic weekend. As a talented bachelor with a decent income, Professor Luo liked weekends. Then, Zhu Tui sent An Xiaozu a message. He said that he had something on at the moment and would only head over to the research institute to do his daily maintenance this afternoon. An Xiaozu's reply was concise as usual. It was only 2 words. "Got it." Then, Zhu Tui quickly started to clean the dormitory. The hygiene of the dormitory today belonged to him. The hygiene of the dormitory for the next month would still belong to him. The cleaning battle ended in 15 minutes. Zhu Tui changed into a different outfit as quickly as possible. He was wearing a pair of thick-soled white sneakers, a pair of black sweatpants, and a casual white t-shirt. After all, it was the hottest season in August. His outfit was the most comfortable. Of course, he also had some accessories on him. There was a silver chain that Zhu Tui had bought online for a few $100s. At the bottom of the chain was the pocket-sized flying sword that Xiaozu had given him. The chain was around his neck, and the pocket-sized flying sword that was dangling down happened to be hidden under his shirt. It looked ordinary. However, it gave Zhu Tui a strange sense of security. That was his most powerful offensive weapon at the moment. He could only keep the alloy silver pill in his pocket. By the time he was done, 30 minutes had passed. However, what made Zhu Tui break down was that Luo Murong had not come out of his room. "Murong, I'm done. Are you done?" "I'll be done soon. Bring me some breakfast. We'll eat along the way." Luo Murong's voice rang out from within the room. Zhu Tui quickly went downstairs and bought his breakfast. He returned to the dormitory building 20 minutes later, but he still did not see Luo Murong. Why would the person he was waiting for be more troublesome than a female student? Zhu Tui was a little frustrated. While he was feeling dejected, a sound rang out from the sky. A pure black repulsive force flying car suddenly stopped above Zhu Tui and slowly descended. Luo Murong's head poked out slightly from the window. Coupled with his exquisite outfit, he looked extremely noble. It was no wonder fangirls would send him flowers every day. Get on. Zhu Tui only had one thought when he saw the luxurious repulsion force flying car. Oh, FCK. Chapter 115, A Murderous Gaze. This was the first time Zhu Tui was riding a repulsion force flying car. Actually, he also had a car at home. Zhu Jianguo had bought a multi-purpose maglev car a long time ago. It could be used to run on the highway or on the maglev highway. Zhu Jianguo would bring his family along for a ride when everyone was free during the weekends. According to his father, it was less than $100,000. It was rather cheap. However, considering how the repulsive force flying skateboard cost about $1 million, the repulsive force flying car must be very expensive. In the end, Zhu Tui could not suppress the curiosity in his heart and asked the question. "Murong, your flying car is rather expensive, right?" "Not really, this car is mainly used for city transportation and has not been modified much. It only costs a little more than $2 million for a two-seater," Luo Murong said as he drove. "It only." That term was a little hurtful. "You'll have one in the future. Furthermore, this is nothing much. If you need a modified flying car for your missions in the future, you'll have to spend at least a few million to meet the requirements. Take my other flying car for example. It's a little ugly, but the value of that car is equivalent to 6 of these," Luo Murong proactively explained, perhaps seeing through Zhu Tui's uneasiness. 12 million. A number silently flashed past Zhu Tui's mind. "Murong, your family is really rich." Zhu Tui gave a casual reply. He did not want to talk about this hurtful question anymore. However, when he heard Zhu Tui's words, Luo Murong suddenly stopped the flying vehicle in midair. "Zhu Tui, my family is really rich. However, what I want to tell you is that I've earned the flying cars I'm using, including the ones I'm wearing and my daily expenses since my second year in college. I would never be ashamed if someone said that my family is rich. However, I hate it when people think that everything I have now is because my family is rich. My father had created superior conditions for me when I was young. However, I have also worked hard to achieve what I have today through the combination of the two. Furthermore, according to the agreement I made with my family, I have to be self-sufficient from the second year onward." At this point, Luo Murong paused and said, "You are my roommate. I also know that you have just entered the school and are not clear about many things. So, I am not angry that you said that. But in the future, I hope that you can remember it." Luo Murong might have felt that he had gone overboard with his words. He then added, "I'm sorry. I've been called a rich second-generation heir since I was young. Everyone saw that I have a good father, but they have never seen how hard I work. That's why I hate those." Zhu Tui was silent for a moment. Are all rich second-generation heirs this hard-working in this day and age? "Murong, I'm sorry. I understand now," Zhu Tui said. Luo Murong's luxurious repulsion force flying car started to fly at a low altitude again. As it flew, Luo Murong started chatting with Zhu Tui. "Zhu Tui, you have to understand that the times and the world have completely changed. We should be the most exceptional batch of genetic newcomers. We should also be a genetic newcomer in a narrower sense. Those so-called genetic newcomers who had been administered with the genetic liberation elixir and had their abilities slightly enhanced were basically ordinary people in the past. Those of us who walk at the forefront of the path of genetic evolution are the true genetic newcomers. Those things that ordinary people look up to are within our reach. Take the repulsion force flying car for example. It cost over $2 million. That was an exorbitant price for ordinary people. However, to me, it is merely a reward for my mission. Of course, the difficulties and dangers we face during this mission are not something ordinary people can imagine. You can also do these extermination missions when you have a certain level of confidence in your abilities and meet the requirements of the school. Okay, thank you. Zhu Tui had learned about the extermination mission a long time ago. And Xiaozhu had also told him in the past that the research funding for the Research Institute No. 14 was insufficient. She was prepared to undertake the extermination mission after she recovered to replenish her research funding. The extermination mission was related to his current genetic evolution. Humans passed their genes down too slowly. Only 4 to 5 generations had passed in 100 years. The enhancement to human strength was too small. That was why they chose to go through this sudden evolution. However, the passing down of genes in the wild was progressing at a terrifying rate. The larger theory was that humans had managed to influence all living things in nature after they unlocked the genetic chains and underwent mutation. There were a lot of smaller theories too. For example, there was the extraterrestrial battlefield's radiation, the extraterrestrial invaders 100 years ago who injected genetic weapons into the blue star, etc. There was no conclusive reason. However, the wilderness of the blue star had become a paradise for plants and animals. 100 years ago, as long as a place was within the reach of humans, 10,000 humans would arrive one after the other to occupy, develop, or even destroy it. Humans were the masters of nature. However, ever since the Great Genetic Age, humans have constantly retreated from nature. The deep mountains and forests that humans loved to visit in the past had become a forbidden area for life. Ordinary people would not survive a night if they barged in. Over the years, humans had constantly retreated from nature. Now, they had retreated to the edge of the city. Even so, nature still needed to be eliminated by the government from time to time. Otherwise, the mutated animals and plants would invade human lives and cause massive losses. A large number of people would be assigned to clean up the peripheral areas. However, the powerful individuals and groups living in the deep mountains and forests needed true genetic newcomers to exterminate them. They had also sent an army to wipe them out in the past. It had an effect. However, consuming too many resources was extremely harmful to the environment, especially in complicated terrain. They might even be wiped out by a group of creatures if they were not careful. Later on, the Genetic Research Institute, various genetic pharmaceutical companies, and various research institutes developed a strong need for these mutated animals and plants in the wilderness. After decades of development, the extermination mission had become a system. However, the Waxia Genetic Evolution College also had a rigid requirement for this. Second-year students who were level C genetic liberators and above could only accept missions to eliminate them after they passed the practical tests. He chatted with Luo Murong along the way and was not bored. The repulsion force flying car flew at a low altitude. There was no traffic jam. It took them less than 20 minutes to arrive at the branch of the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association in the west of the capital. There were many flying cars in the parking lot. Many people were walking around. Today, the vice chairman of the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association, Shen Juishuang, is giving an internal public lecture. He is a true elder. It is rumored that his individual strength reached the genetic transmutation realm 30 years ago. He is at the same level as the vice principal of the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. He had also contributed greatly to the extraterrestrial battlefield. Students from the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Societies in the capital and the surrounding Genetic Evolution colleges had all rushed over. There are also many people like me who have joined the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association. Come and listen to the lecture. See if you can understand anything, Luo Murong introduced after they parked the car. The public lesson this time was at the training hall of the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association. Due to the ingenious design, The small venues that could hold several hundred to 1,000 people became a large-scale comprehensive training hall that could hold over 10,000 people after they were combined and moved. At this moment, there was a long queue at the various entrances of the venue. Luo Murong did not bring Zhu Tui along to the queue. Instead, he brought Zhu Tui along as he walked into a VIP passageway that was not crowded. The only accident along the way was the actions of a few of Murong's fangirls. They blushed and wanted to greet Murong, but they were immediately pushed back by Luo Murong's gaze. Luo Murong, who was dressed in hanfu, strode forward in such a crowded area. His aura was too powerful. Zhu Tui, who was following behind Luo Murong, had the illusion that he was a sidekick. At the VIP tunnel, other people would have to verify their identity or check their electronic identity in order to pass, but Luo Murong could pass with just his face. Then, he silently watched as Zhu Tui's electronic identity was examined. The calm smile at the corner of his lips suddenly gave Zhu Tui the urge to beat the crap out of him. Did this guy have such a high realm in showing off? The people who ran forward to greet Luo Murong after they entered the venue were all young ladies. There were even a few pretty young ladies who were wearing hand clothes. A few of them were young ladies with exceptional charisma. These young ladies came forward to greet him. Some even took the initiative to shake his hand. However, they were all rejected by Luo Murong with a look. Zhu Tui became a little anxious when he saw this. He was thinking about a question. If it was him, would he shake hands with all of these young ladies? If they were willing, should he offer a polite hug? Zhu Tui thought that he would. However, Luo Murong rejected all of them. He even disregarded them. No wonder, the reputation of liking men was probably derived from this. Brother Murong, over here. Over here, I've reserved a seat for you. A lady in a hanfu shouted at Luo Murong as she waved a small folding fan. Luo Murong looked at the seat number he had just gotten, then glanced toward the seat of the lady in the hanfu. He then took the initiative to walk over. The seat that the lady in the hanfu occupied was excellent. It was quite close to the main stage, but it was not one that he had to look up to. It was in the best position. Mei Qingfei was very excited when she saw Luo Murong walk over. Her heart beat faster when she saw Luo Murong walk over. Indeed, Brother Murong liked things that were truly meaningful. She had done the right thing. Brother Murong, I came early at 5 in the morning and finally got to the 2 best seats. She was wearing a collared hand-style dress. Coupled with the light blue ribbon that hung from her long black hair, she looked as elegant as a fairy. Her blushing cheeks made her look even more alluring. Thank you. Luo Murong fetched over the 2 seat cards that Mei Qingfei was holding and handed one over to Zhu Tui. Have a seat first. Zhu Tui was startled. Instantly, he felt a dozen murderous gazes turn toward him. Mei Qingfei's gaze was the most murderous. You can go to the seat you got if you don't like sitting here, Luo Murong added. Zhu Tui did not have an appointment, so the seats that he had been given were the last few rows. He would be a fool if he made another mistake in this choice. He ignored the murderous intent in Mei Qingfei's eyes and sat down immediately. Seeing that Zhu Tui had taken a seat, Luo Murong placed his seat card in the middle as well as the other seat card that Mei Qingfei had handed him in front of her. You can choose from these 2 tickets. See which one you want to sit on. I'll sit on the remaining one. Luo Murong gave Mei Qingfei a chance to make her choice. Instantly, at least 4 to 5 fangirls in the middle seat for Luo Murong turned to look in his direction. Mei Qingfei looked at the seats around her, then glanced toward the various young ladies sitting around Luo Murong's original seat. She then made a decision. She no longer had a chance, but she could not allow anyone else to get close to Luo Murong. Brother Murong, you can sit in my seat. I'll go to your seat. Thank you. Before she left, Mei Qingfei glared at Zhu Tui. Her gaze was murderous. Of course, when Mei Qingfei walked toward the seat that originally belonged to Luo Murong, she also received a murderous look from the girls around her. The atmosphere was filled with killing intent. Thanks. Luo Murong was thanking Zhu Tui, his shield. Murong, this is something that people dream about. Why did you refuse? Zhu Tui could not help but ask. You don't understand. Luo Murong shook his head. A few minutes later, the bell rang. The noisy chatter in the venue immediately disappeared. An old man with white hair but a glowing face and old shoes slowly walked onto the platform. Chapter 116, Sensation of Qi 1. Those who are sitting here today all have a certain level of understanding of genetic ancient martial arts. Some might even have the intention to study or understand genetic ancient martial arts in depth. So I won't tell you some of the things that are common knowledge. Today, I will only talk about one problem that is still being debated by various sectors. And that is the true difference between the extreme branch of genetic evolution and the school of genetic ancient martial arts. The old man did not speak quickly, but his voice was loud and clear. Everyone could hear him clearly. He had just finished his sentence when the entire venue erupted in thunderous applause. Zhu Tui was also clapping. That was because the issue that Shen Juoxuang brought up was the real deal. That was what many of them were truly confused about. Just what was the difference between genetic ancient martial arts and the genetic mutation evolution path that major genetic evolution colleges promoted? Zhu Tui did not have a clear answer to this question even though he had read all of the theory books in Luo Murong's room. Of course, what I am saying today is merely my opinion. It only represents my thoughts and understanding. If there are people who have different opinions, we can find an opportunity to discuss it in depth after class. Old Master Shen laughed. He casually sat down on a chair and started his lecture. The genetic mutation evolution path that the schools promote is similar to our genetic ancient martial arts. In theory, the path of genetic mutation and evolution promoted by the school includes genetic ancient martial arts. They had too many things in common. Both methods allow for the continuous enhancement of the limits to the explosive abilities of our bodies through a variety of secret techniques that train the body. Furthermore, the reason genetic ancient martial arts could be revived, from when they were the butt of jokes 100 years ago to now, was because the earliest pioneers of genetic ancient martial arts had first walked the path of genetic mutation and evolution. Then, why did genetic ancient martial arts, which originate from the path of genetic mutation and evolution, later independently developed into a genetic ancient martial arts school? In this, it involves the fundamental difference between the genetic mutation evolution path promoted by the school and the genetic ancient martial arts school. And that is the genetic ability field. The more common term for it now was an energy field. All of you here should know this. An energy field was the most powerful tool an extreme branch cultivator could use against a mystery branch cultivator in the future. At the same time, the energy field was the most powerful defensive and destructive force an extreme branch cultivator could have in the future. There's no contest. Our genetic ancient martial arts school also has an energy field. However, within the genetic ancient martial arts school, especially old people like us, we are more willing to call an energy field, inner qi, or perhaps true energy. This term was rather ancient. However, no matter if it is called an energy field, inner qi, or true energy, the things it represents are the same. Similarly, we of the genetic ancient martial arts school have to thank the founder of the genetic mutation evolution path for reproducing the internal energy that we only saw in movies and novels in the past. Since the names and properties of the two are the same, what's the difference? Here, I'll get a few students to do a demonstration. You should be able to understand what I mean. This is my disciple, Meng Sixi. He has already made small achievements in the training of his internal energy, which is also his energy field. The strength of his energy field is roughly equivalent to that of a level B genetic liberator. Are there any level C genetic liberators or above who can use their energy fields present in the lecture today to cooperate with the demonstration? Shen Juoxuang said. There were no shy students in attendance. Many people immediately raised their hands to display their abilities. Shen Juoxuang's assistant had chosen a total of 8 genetic liberators from level C to level A to take the stage. The other person was a level F genetic mutant. The content was simple. There was a stack of high-strength steel plates in front of everyone. It was 60 centimeters long, 40 centimeters wide, and 1.2 centimeters thick. These high-strength steel blocks could block off a single shot from an ordinary pistol. At this moment, they were all placed on powerful immobilization devices. There was only one request for all of the exhibitors, including Shen Juoxuang's disciple, Meng Sixi. And that is to use different parts of their bodies to shatter the high-strength steel plate. They could no longer use that body part after they smashed the high-intensity steel plate. They had to switch to another body part. Soon, the display started. There were continuous explosions. However, the explosions soon became monotonous. All of the extreme branch cultivators would no longer be able to shatter the other reinforced steel plates after they shattered one or two of them and switched to the other body parts. Zhu Tui, who was sitting closer to the stage and even using his hazy mental senses to sense what was happening, suddenly made a small discovery. The areas where the extreme branch cultivators smashed the reinforced steel plates were all areas where the body's explosive energy fields were. For example, they might be able to break them with their fists, but they could not do so when they switched to their elbows and legs. That was because the genetic ability chain around their legs that had an energy field had not been activated. It could not unleash an energy field attack. Some could use their elbows or legs, but not their fists and palms. Even the strongest level F genetic mutant only managed to break 5 reinforced steel plates before he couldn't do so. However, on the other hand, Shen Juoxuang's disciple, Meng Sixi, was constantly blowing up the reinforced steel panels. Chapter 117, Sensation of Qi 2. He changed his body part for every piece that broke. First, it was his feet, then his fists, then his elbows, then his knees. Finally, he started to break those with his fingers. However, breaking it with a single finger seemed to be rather difficult for Meng Sixi. He had to silently accumulate power for a few seconds, then tap his finger on it. He instantly smashed the reinforced steel plate. There were 10 fingers. Other than the little finger, the rest of the 8 fingers had all broken the reinforced steel plate. This move shocked everyone present. An extreme branch cultivator on the stage seemed to be unconvinced. He even suspected that there was a problem. Come, try using the piece that I can't break. See if you can shatter it with your finger. Meng Sixi smiled slightly but did not say anything. He stepped forward and assumed a horse stance. He pointed his finger forward. The reinforced steel plate that the extreme branch cultivator could not break with his kick instantly shattered. That was not all. Meng Sixi took a step to the side and tapped his target with every step he took. He took turns tapping his target with his 8 fingers and shattered the reinforced steel plates that the other extreme branch cultivators could not break even after they swapped their attacking spots. He then cupped his fists in acknowledgement. Instantly, thunderous applause rang out from below the stage. The 9 people on the stage who were just props for the show were also extremely shocked. How in the world did he do that? The reinforced steel plate that he could not break with his kick could be shattered by Meng Sixi's finger. It was simply. The applause lasted a long time. Shen Juoxuang, who was on the stage, had to wave his hand slightly to suppress the applause. The display just now had already displayed the true difference between the extreme branch and our genetic ancient martial arts school in terms of energy fields. Because there are many people, I won't discuss it with you. I'll go straight to the point. I believe that everyone has already seen it. Extreme branch cultivators can only unleash powerful energy field attacks when they have activated a designated location on the genetic ability chain that can unleash energy field attacks. For example, fists or hands. If they took it one step further, they would be able to activate more genetic ability chains relating to genetic energy fields. There would be more and more areas where they could activate genetic energy fields. Slowly, as more and more areas of the genetic energy field were activated, the genetic energy field would become one with the human body. The genetic energy field would become more powerful in both offense and defense. This was a method of training that involved training from the outside to the inside. However, the energy field of the genetic ancient martial arts school, which is also called inner qi, is different. From the start, once an individual's inner qi reaches a certain level, their inner qi, which is also their energy field, would gather at the danshan. As long as we have a need, the energy fields in our bodies can reach various parts of our bodies and unleash energy attacks. Just now, my disciple, Meng Sixi, has demonstrated that the strength of his energy field is similar to that of the rest of you. However, it is precisely because the genetic ancient martial arts school runs from the inside out that his various body parts could unleash an energy field attack just now and shatter the reinforced steel plate. At this point, Shen Juoxuang suddenly raised his voice. The extreme branch runs from the outside to the inside, while our genetic ancient martial arts school runs from the inside to the outside. I think that is the greatest difference between the two. There was no comparison between who was stronger and who was weaker. However, when you are a genetic liberator, a genetic mutant, or even a person who has just stepped into the genetic evolver realm, the flexibility of our genetic ancient martial arts schools in utilizing energy fields is something that the extreme branch cannot compare with. That included the ability to survive on the battlefield. At the critical moment, the energy fields of our genetic ancient martial arts can be unleashed at any location. We can even block off the attacks of energy bullets. In our genetic ancient martial arts, this is called free will. This explanation made Zhu Tui's eyes light up. The nearly 10,000 listeners below the stage were also inexplicably excited. No one was stupid. On the contrary, they were all rather intelligent. Only if you are alive will your girlfriend, bank balance, house, and even your children and wife be yours. If you died and your girlfriend became someone else's, your bank account would either become someone else's or become silent money. It would be worse if you had a wife and child. Your wife might belong to someone else, and your child would be beaten up by someone else. Then, what was the most important? Survival was the most important thing. An energy field that could be activated at any location within a genetic ancient martial artist would definitely greatly enhance their ability to survive. There was not a person present who did not want to. There was no need to mention those who had already started training. The students from the genetic ancient martial arts clubs in various genetic evolution colleges could not wait to study and train so that their energy fields could erupt at any point in their bodies. That way, their offensive and defensive capabilities would be greatly enhanced. I can understand how you guys are feeling right now. So, today, I will be imparting to you the introductory technique of genetic ancient martial arts, the energy field training. However, there is one thing that I have to pour cold water on the students who are in this lecture. Because the way an energy field is used is different. Members of the genetic ancient martial arts school have a stronger ability to survive. However, at the same time, the reason the Waxia Genetic Committee did not promote genetic ancient martial arts on a large scale is that the entry-level training method of genetic ancient martial arts related to the energy field is a little unorthodox. Not everyone can cultivate the elementary energy field training method of the genetic ancient martial arts. There was a term for it, the sensation of qi. Currently, for genetic newcomers, those who could train and find a sense of qi within 3 days were all talented in genetic ancient martial arts. Those who can sense qi within 7 days would barely be able to cultivate the secret energy field technique of the genetic ancient martial arts. However, your future advancement will be average. If you have the support of resources, it is recommended that you train in the extreme branch. Your advancement there might be faster. If you cannot find the sensation of qi after 7 days, then it is a pity that you do not have much talent in the field of genetic ancient martial arts. Of course, you do not have to be disappointed, much less dejected. Extreme branch training is still your best option. Currently, among the Blue Star's top 10 experts, 5 of them are extreme branch cultivators. The moment he said that, the students who had been worried that they would not have any talent revealed relieved expressions. Fortunately, the genetic ancient martial arts only gave them one more option. It was not the only option. Zhu Tui also had the same expression. Luo Murong's extremely soft voice suddenly rang out beside Zhu Tui's ear. There's something that Elder Shen did not say. The 5 ultimate experts from the extreme branch are all ranked last 5. The only non-mystery branch cultivator who managed to enter the top 5 came from the genetic ancient martial arts school. Zhu Tui was startled. The truth was indeed in the hands of a few people. Next, I'll display the introductory method of cultivating the energy field of our genetic ancient martial arts on the large screen. Those who can sense qi within 3 hours would be talented. You can tell me directly. As long as you are willing, you can become a level E member of our genetic ancient martial arts. You can further learn about our genetic ancient martial arts. Of course, after you return, you can contact our staff and join the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association if you can feel your qi within 3 days. However, students who only have a sense of qi after 3 days, I would advise you to consider this seriously. As Shen Juoshuang finished his sentence, a few poses appeared on the screen. There were also over 100 words. The contents of the report shocked Zhu Tui. The first few sentences were very similar to Zhu Tui's meditation technique. Calming his mind, inhaling through his nose, exhaling through his mouth, and concentrating on his danshan with all his might. There was a diagram on the screen that indicated the location of his so-called danshan. Closing his eyes and visualizing his danshan as a lake of dry water, as if it were a pond without water. Then, visualize the tangible and intangible water vapor flowing through his limbs and bones. Directed by consciousness, the tangible and intangible water vapor in his limbs and bones would gather in his danshan, which is like a dried-up lake or a pond without water. At that time, the water vapor would enter the withered danshan, and the body would be filled with joy. This was the sensation of qi. Alright, this is the introductory technique of the genetic ancient energy field. You can try it out if you are interested, Shen Juoxuang said. Almost immediately after he said that, more than 90% of the students in the venue started to try it out with their eyes closed. Zhu Tui was not in a hurry to begin. Instead, he looked toward Luo Murong. Murong, is this the way to train? Of course, I also entered the school using this method. How long did it take you to find the sensation of qi? Zhu Tui asked. Don't compare yourself with me. I am a genius among geniuses. It only took me an hour. Luo Murong had a proud expression when he mentioned this. TCH. Chapter 118, My Face Hurts a Little, 1. The technique of inhaling through his nose and exhaling through his mouth was as simple as eating and drinking to Zhu Tui. What was a little foreign was visualization. This was a little difficult for him. Other people would really visualize a dried-up lake in the danshan in their minds. However, Zhu Tui immediately entered the introspective state the moment he closed his eyes and started visualizing. He saw the state of his body. In the realistic introspective state, the so-called danshan was at the lower abdomen. There was no danshan in the skin, peritoneum, internal organs, or blood. His consciousness changed slightly and entered the illusory introspective state. In the illusory introspective state, his lower abdomen was covered in gray, inactivated genetic base point. He did not have a danshan. However, Zhu Tui had read most about the concept of visualization in the books that Luo Murong had lent him. The most important thing about visualization was that you visualized it before thinking about it. What did that mean? In a person's subjective consciousness, they would first have the concept of a dry lake or a pond. If they really did not have any, they could personally take a look at the dry lake. This was called observing. This was a concept that countless people shared. They could even imagine a basin without water. Then, next is thought. What did thought mean? It was to imagine the image of the dried-up lake in their consciousness into the danshan. Simply put, it was enough to imagine that there was a dried-up lake in the danshan. Who cared if it existed? It was fine as long as they could imagine it. This was the visualization technique. That was not difficult for Zhu Tui. He could just imagine the area of his danshan as a dried-up lake. He did it with a little effort. After that, he visualized the tangible and intangible water vapor within his body. However, it was easy to imagine. If he thinks there is, then there is. And he had done it. Then, with his consciousness as the main force, he gathered and directed the tangible and intangible water vapor within his limbs and bones into the dried-up lake, which was also his danshan. Zhu Tui was too familiar with this step. Both the earliest method of activating genetic base points at will and the current method of mind concentration used consciousness as the lead to change the flow of energy within his body. Almost immediately after Zhu Tui thought about it, he felt several dozen streaks of weak heat flowing toward his danshan from various parts of his body. Instantly, the water vapor entered his danshan and joy blossomed within him. This so-called joy was a kind of happiness that came from the body itself. The momentary happiness Zhu Tui felt even made him a little shocked. After the dozens of weak streams of heat gathered at his dried lake, the danshan in his lower abdomen felt warm. It was as though a warm baby was pressing against his stomach. It felt extremely comfortable. He felt a strange sense of fulfillment in the depths of his heart. He was like a hungry person who had eaten his fill. He was very satisfied. However, that was all he got from Shen Juoxuang's introductory training technique. Zhu Tui did not know what to do next. Once the thought was released, the focus of his visualization and consciousness would immediately dissipate. The heat that had just gathered at his danshan instantly dissipated and flowed into his limbs. His heart felt empty and he did not feel good. Confused, Zhu Tui opened his eyes. Murong, what exactly is the sensation of qi? Zhu Tui asked. Why, isn't it a little difficult? Luo Murong smiled slightly. He guided Zhu Tui once again. Everyone feels differently. You have to follow the instructions of the teacher and focus on your visualization. Then, highly focus on visualizing the tangible and intangible auras in your limbs and bones. Merge them all into your danshan. You'll have a feeling of qi when you do that. When I visualized the heat flowing into my danshan just now, I felt very comfortable. My danshan felt warm. I was also very satisfied. However, I do not know what to do next. With a thought, the warm current that had flowed into my danshan returned to my limbs. I feel as though my heart has been emptied. Zhu Tui had not finished his sentence when he suddenly noticed that Luo Murong's expression had become extremely strange. Even the golden falcon bug between his brows had become a little deformed because of his widened eyes. Are you sure that you did not practice the introductory method of the energy field before this? No, this is my first try, Zhu Tui said, blinking. Luo Murong was a little confused. You only took a minute, right? You already have a feeling of qi. This is the hot sensation that gathers at the danshan, the sensation of qi. Luo Murong was speechless. Suddenly, he felt his face hurt. A few minutes ago, he had told Zhu Tui not to compare himself with him. He, Luo Murong, was a genius among geniuses. He had managed to get a sense of qi within an hour. But now, he has been slapped in the face. Zhu Tui only used a few minutes, maybe even a minute, to get a sense of qi. Then what did you think it was? Luo Murong felt that his pride had been hurt. His tone was not good. Why did the heat that gathered, which is the sensation of qi, dissipate? That's because your danshan has not been truly activating. How do I activate the danshan? The most basic method of activating the danshan is actually very simple. It's not a secret. Repeat this step after you find the sensation of qi. Your sensation of qi will become stronger as you repeat the process. You would continuously stimulate the genetic base points related to your danshan. When the stimulation reaches a certain level, you would be able to activate this genetic base point. That would be the beginning of the activation of your danshan. Chapter 119, My face hurts a little, too. However, in modern genetic theory, the so-called danshan was merely a storage place for energy fields. Any extreme branch cultivator would have a storage for an energy field similar to their danshan at the core of their body, where they could use their energy fields to attack. Most importantly, the technique you used to quickly strengthen the energy field you stored in your danshan is a secret technique, Luo Murong explained. Do I have to join the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association? Zhu Tui finally reacted. Yes. Murong, do they have any special requirements for joining the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association? Zhu Tui asked. Yes, the first request is to defend Waxia, Luo Murong said. Zhu Tui felt that he fulfilled that requirement naturally. Are there any more? The second request is that you must not do anything that would damage the reputation of the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts School or the association, Luo Murong said. That doesn't seem to be a problem. Anything else? That's all. This surprised Zhu Tui. Those 2 points were not difficult. It looked like joining the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association would not be too difficult. Murong, will I be able to obtain secret techniques related to the energy field if I join the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association? Zhu Tui asked. It's just the basics. There are deeper levels that require a corresponding number of contribution points. I need the corresponding contribution points too. Zhu Tui was a little shocked. Of course, the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association is not a public welfare organization. Furthermore, free things are the least cherished things in this world. Otherwise, why would they set a genetic admission score for you and not popularize it to the public? You wouldn't have the effort and passion you have now if the genetic liberation elixir had been popularized among the people. It is the same in the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association. After he said this, Luo Murong pointed toward a button beside Zhu Tui's seat and said, if you want to further study the genetic ancient martial arts and join the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association, press that button. Inform the attendant that you have found the qi sensation. With the alarming speed at which you found the sensation of qi, Mr. Shen Juoshuang should be able to meet you personally. He would largely put you on his priority nurturing list. There should be many benefits. Do you need me to push it for you? Luo Murong joked as he pointed towards the button. Zhu Tui instinctively wanted to agree. Currently, he was rather interested in genetic ancient martial arts. Furthermore, based on what he had displayed just now, the genetic ancient martial arts energy field was more suitable for him. If he could master the energy field of genetic ancient martial arts, then the problem of his close-range defense would be partially solved. Currently, Zhu Tui's midrange attacks were very powerful. But, it would be extremely dangerous if the enemies got close to him. If he could master the energy field of genetic ancient martial arts, then Zhu Tui's offense and defense would have a systematic foundation. Also, the introductory technique of the genetic ancient energy field was rather similar to Zhu Tui's meditation technique. To be honest, he wanted to continue researching in that direction. He wanted to see if he could find the source and resolve his doubts. Then, he would take another step in this direction. However, Zhu Tui stopped because he was considering another problem. Genetic miracle. He was already an official member of the Research Institute No. 14, which meant that he was now in the School of Genetic Miracles. Zhu Tui did not know if he would be breaking any rules if he joined the Genetic Ancient Association to learn about genetic energy fields. However, he had to inform his teacher, and Xiaozhu, before he entered the Genetic Ancient Association to learn about the genetic energy fields. He had to ask for her opinion. Zhu Tui immediately sent a message to Xiaozhu. Miss An, I attended an internal lecture on genetic ancient martial arts with a few other students today. I am very interested in the genetic ancient martial arts energy fields and have found a sense of qi. I wish to learn about genetic ancient martial arts energy fields to make up for my shortcomings in close combat. Are genetic miracles allowed to do that? It looks like you managed to find a sense of qi during your public lecture. Practicing the energy field of genetic ancient martial arts is not bad. In this regard, genetic miracles do not have many requirements, much less prohibitions. Furthermore, to some extent, genetic miracles encourage members to learn the theories and powers of other schools. In this day and age, a nation could only become a nation if it accepted all kinds of people. However, there is one thing that you have to remember. And Xiaozhu replied very quickly. She must have set Zhu Tui up as a particularly important contact. Tell me, Miss An. There are many things that are useful to us or directions that we need to learn and train in. However, each of us has a limited amount of time and energy. In the future, during your studies and training, you must differentiate between your priorities and allocate your training energy and time wisely. Otherwise, being proficient in every aspect and being average in every aspect would be the same, and Xiaozhu replied. Thank you for your reminder, Miss An. I understand. Zhu Tui really did understand. However, and Xiaozhu's suggestion was a little different from what Zhu Tui really thought. Currently, what he lacked the most were training resources. In simpler terms, he was poor. Zhu Tui immediately made a decision after he got a reply from Xiaozhu. He gently pressed on the button beside his seat. Have you thought it through? Luo Murong laughed. Yes, I have. Zhu Tui nodded. At this moment, Meng Sixi, who had been displaying the wonders of the genetic ancient martial arts energy field on the stage, quickly arrived in front of Zhu Tui's seat. You were the one who pressed on it. It has only been 15 minutes, but you managed to find the sensation of qi. He had not finished his sentence when Meng Sixi suddenly saw Luo Murong. He quickly cupped his fists toward Luo Murong. Greetings, senior brother Luo. Luo Murong returned to his usual aloof self. He let out a slight grunt and nodded slightly as a form of greeting. Zhu Tui was a little shocked by his attitude. It looked like he really was roommates with Luo Murong. They were just a little closer. Senior Luo, let me deal with this side first. Meng Sixi pointed toward Zhu Tui. There's no need to deal with it. I've already verified that he has indeed found the sensation of qi, Luo Murong said. Meng Si suddenly revealed a shocked expression. It's only been 15 minutes, right? How is that possible? Could he have practiced this before? Meng Sixi instinctively questioned him. Luo Murong had wanted to tell Zhu Tui that he managed to find his chi in a minute, but he stopped himself when he heard that. He should not cause trouble for Zhu Tui. Let's go see Elder Shen together. Let Elder Shen have a look. Since Luo Murong had said so, Meng Sixi could only agree. He immediately brought Zhu Tui and Luo Murong out of the venue and into a small but elegant room at the back of the venue. Mr. Shen Juoxuang, who had just finished his lesson, was leisurely sipping on a cup of old tea. Teacher, I've brought him along. He is the first student who managed to find a sense of chi within 15 minutes. However, he did not join the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Club. This is his first time here. He was brought here by Senior Luo, Meng Sixi reported. Murong, you're here. Sit. Shen Juoxuang observed Luo Murong and Zhu Tui as she spoke. You've cleaned yourself up even more exquisitely than a young lady. Even an old fogey like me would want to take another look. Fortunately, as he sighed, he shifted the topic to Zhu Tui. Young man, you can try to sense your chi again in front of me. Don't be nervous. Just act as if you were normal just now. Shen Juoxuang closed his eyes after he finished speaking. Zhu Tui was not nervous at all. He nodded and sat down on the empty futon beside him. He calmed himself down. He first took a gentle breath to clear his mind, then exhaled a mouthful of impure air to calm his mind. The breaths were long and loose. He instantly cleared his mind of distracting thoughts and entered a meditative state. He started the visualization technique. Without waiting for the heat flow in Zhu Tui's body to appear and for him to find the sensation of chi, Mr. Shen, who had just closed his eyes to sense the air, suddenly opened his eyes and exclaimed. What a fast meditation speed! Chapter 120, The Enlightened Shield 1. Shen Juoxuang did not have the ability to sense things with his mind power. However, when an individual's genetic martial arts energy field was trained to a certain extent, he would be able to sense a portion of the energy released by the energy field. He was especially sensitive to energy fields. Just now, in the senses of his energy field, Zhu Tui, Meng Sixi, and Luo Murong were like three electronic screens that were constantly flashing with various information. However, Zhu Tui, who was sitting cross-legged, instantly cleared his screen and became a single signal. That was a more modern theory. Using the professional term of genetic ancient martial arts, Zhu Tui instantly entered an ethereal meditative state without any distracting thoughts. Honestly, even Shen Juoxuang would not be able to enter a meditative state that quickly. It was also because of Shen Juoxuang's reminder that Luo Murong reacted. Not only was the speed at which Zhu Tui found the sensation of chi fast, but the speed at which he entered a meditative state was also startling. After recovering from his shock, Shen Juoxuang closed his eyes and sensed his surroundings for a while. Then, he slowly nodded. He has indeed found a sense of chi. I can feel it. The speed is indeed very fast. Furthermore, his inner chi would strengthen every time he searched for the sensation of chi. Murong, you taught him? Shen Juoxuang asked in surprise. He had read the books I have regarding genetic ancient martial arts, but I have never taught him any of those, Luo Murong said. That's strange. Such a meditative speed is extremely rare. Furthermore, the speed at which he's searching for the sensation of chi is top-notch even among talents. Murong, you've found us another good seedling. Shen Juoxuang laughed. Luo Murong smiled but did not reply. All right, child. The verification is done. You have indeed found the sensation of chi. Get up. Shen Juoxuang gently patted Zhu Tui's shoulder. Your name is Zhu Tui, right? Are you willing to join the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association and further study the genetic ancient martial arts? Shen Juoxuang immediately asked Zhu Tui a question after he stood up. Just like before, Zhu Tui did not agree immediately. Mr. Shen, I am willing to do that. However, there is a situation that I have to clarify. All right, tell me. I am a student from the Mystery Branches School of Enlightened Mind in the Waxia Genetic Evolution College. I am also an intern researcher at the Genetic Research Institute No. 14. As for our Institute 14, we are also a genetic evolution school called the Genetic Miracle. That means to say that I have already learned a mind power technique from Genetic Miracle. Would you mind or forbid me from joining the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association? Zhu Tui was very direct. Instead of facing trouble in the future, it was better to clarify things now. The number 14 Research Institute. A genetic miracle. Shen Juoxuang suddenly revealed a reminiscent expression, then a look of surprise. Mr. Shang, is the genetic miracle you are talking about the genetic miracle that Shang Long created? Shen Juoxuang's voice was filled with respect when he mentioned Shang Long. Yes, the Mr. Shang you are talking about is the founder of our Institute 14, Zhu Tui confirmed. As expected, I wonder how far the research on the abnormal load of mind power led by Mr. Shang has progressed. Has the research been successful? Shen Juoxuang instinctively asked after he got a definite answer. Abnormal load of mind power. Zhu Tui shook his head in a daze. Mr. Shen, I don't know about that. I've just joined the genetic miracle not long ago. This was the second time Zhu Tui had heard the words, abnormal load of mind power. However, Zhu Tui did not know the specifics. It looked like this was an important research project for the Research Institute number 14. Look at me. I've become confused. I can't believe I'm asking you this. Shen Juoxuang patted his head in a self-deprecating manner. The genetic miracle that Mr. Shang created majored in the mystery branch. Not only does it not conflict with our genetic ancient martial arts, but it can also complement each other. You would have no problems joining the school. However, a person's energy and time were limited. Under normal circumstances, a person could only achieve something by focusing on one direction. When the time comes, you'll have to consider which direction your major is. Zhu Tui could not help but have a favorable impression of old Master Shen when he heard this. What Shen Juoxuang said was similar to what An Shaozu had told him. Those who could say that were good teachers with morals. You managed to find the sensation of qi in 15 minutes. Coupled with your fast meditative speed, you must be extremely talented. You would have no problems joining the Genetic Martial Association and becoming a level E member. How about this? Shen Juoxuang suddenly muttered to himself, if you can activate your fundamental danshan and solidify your first ball of inner qi within 7 days, I'll make an exception and accept you as my last disciple. What do you think? Are you willing? By the side, Meng Sixi froze. Back then, he had been put through half a year of observation to get Shen Juoxuang to take him in as a disciple. During that time, he did not even dare to make any calls, much less browse through social media to relax. He practiced his fists and trained his inner qi every day to satisfy the old man so that he could take him in as a disciple. He lived like a monk for half a year. Finally, old Master Shen relented and said, your potential is above average, but you have a determined temperament. If you persist, you will become a great asset. Just like that, Meng Sixi became old Master Shen's disciple. However, he had only met Zhu Tui a few minutes ago and he would be taken in as a personal disciple. A last disciple often had an extraordinary meaning within the Genetic Ancient Martial Arts Association. It had the meaning of being an exceptional disciple.